Hello, this is the February video chat, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Okay, I guess I have a few announcements. I looked at the questions before I started this, and judging from the mood, I hate doing this, but I'm gonna have to double back on my countdown plan a little bit. Because my original plan was to count down number of videos and then just go all in on the movie. But I think that's going to leave too many people unhappy if I do that. So for now, I'm exempting Freeman's Mind from the countdown. And, well, I just cannot stop the video I'm working on. I'm going to resume Freeman's Mind at a reduced pace, effective in the next day or two, and I'll just keep going. I don't want to plan too far ahead, but that's that much I can plan. I'll just keep working on this side video that's taking forever, and I'll resume Freeman's Mind. I'd say half pace, but it could be more like a third pace, but I'll just keep going on it. I would, most days, I would say every day if nothing weird's going on. So, not promising when it'll be. I will announce when voice work is done on them, because now I'm getting more help with the sound effects, and apparently he's going to be having a bit of a crunch, so I'll let him work at a comfortable pace for him, and I'll just move on to the next video. What I want to do is kind of do this and just kind of insert Freeman just most days with whatever else I'm working on. And then once I've finished these side videos, what I'd like to do is try to do that month of Freeman like I talked about, because I feel like I've neglected the audience too much with that. So everything, something is always behind is what it is. I know it's been a long time since Freeman, but this side video I've been working on, it's been going on like 3.5 years. I've been meaning to like really start on that, get going on it. And I'm going at it quite a bit now. So, however, that doesn't make people waiting on Freeman happy to see it. So it doesn't really work. That's an explanation, not an excuse. Let's see. Oh yeah, if the sound is off or something's weird, just you can always spam the chat in capital letters. So, let's see. What was I gonna say? Wait, no. Okay, yeah, so that's the first announcement. Game Dungeon's in limbo at the moment, but Freeman's Mind, this side video is what's coming next. So I'll just keep working on Freeman's Mind solid, and I'll post when voice work on the next one is done. And the next episode is going to be one of the longest ones so far. So just because of how it worked out with the timing, it's not because it's particularly different from the others. Just I wanted a good jumping off spot. So, oh yeah, a few weeks ago I was on Conversations with Curtis with Paul Morgan Stetler, the lead actor of Phantasmagoria 2. I put that up on the website, but I'll have a link to it in the description. It honestly wasn't too much different than these chats. He had various questions. I think he has from interviewing people, but yeah, gosh, I'm drawing a blank now of everything we said, but it went pretty well. So those things can always be a little awkward because he's in Seattle, so that's like a 9-hour time zone difference for me. So when you have that, there can be like this small delay where it looks like you're interrupting people when that's not my intention, even though that's how it'll be working out in reality. But yeah, so I have a link to that. I watched a few of those before I started it. He's been getting good guests, and it sounds like the announcement from last time helped. He said he had a few guests, and he hadn't replied to any of them yet when I talked to him before the chat. So I guess that's a sign he should be set for a couple months anyway. I plan to give him a mention on the follow-up Game Dungeon episode too. So, yeah, he's got some names I recognize, like some of the people worked on Monkey Island or Gabriel Knight, or some more modern. I haven't even played it yet. It's one I want to. I think the most recent one was for somebody working on what was it? Not for broadcast, where you're working at a TV station or fictional. That's the one I definitely want to play. So yeah, I'll mention it again. If you know someone who might be a good candidate who works on, adventure games with some recognition, or any sort of full motion video games in the past or present, I guess, since they're still going on. I think those are the target audience right now for his guests. Oh, and the other announcement, this is relevant to a future video. I get help on some graphics every now and then, but this time I have sort of like a different request where I'm on the lookout for people who can, if you're good at basically making data look nicer, like, so, I mean, a few charts, it's mostly going to be spreadsheet data, but like, how in some videos, like they'll have like benchmarks or something and like the charts look really nice, like someone who really knows what they're doing with graphic design. That could be helpful for a video I'm working on. I can pay you, but it's probably not going to be what you're worth. So I'm not, it's like what I've been doing lately is paying on percentage, but if that's not good enough, you just want raw amount, maybe you can work out something, but it's probably going to be undervalued. But basically I would have a bunch of data and I would want you to kind of make it look better or have better ways to format it. This is the sort of thing like the GUI video where I can recognize things I like, but I don't always necessarily know what I want in my head just from scratch. So if you have samples, that could be helpful. You can contact me at email rosswscott@gmail.com. So I might get a few offers, so I might just have to pick someone rather than split the load. But yeah, if you think you would be good at that, or alternately, this is it's gonna involve a bunch of data. For online, for just Google spreadsheets, if you're good at making those look good, that, with use of color, fonts, that sort of thing. I'm a fan of gradients. I don't think you can do that on Google though, but for the video. So I'm saying depends on the raw data you want to make look nicer. Think like business level stuff, like a lot of stats, sometimes like notes added in. You might think if you're good at this, like with graphic design, you might have better ideas on how to format it than I do. So, and again, a few charts to go with it, though the charts are less big a deal, like maybe like a pie chart or bar graphs, that sort of thing. But just something that looks nice, that's pleasant to look at, because I'm going to have a bunch of data for this. Let's see. Oh shoot, we're getting some spam in the chat, looks like. Uh-oh. Yeah, maybe don't use the chat for like other advertising. I mean, if you were like working on a mod that was like you think my audience might like for a game, that's fine. But this just looks like plain average. Let's see, can I get rid of that? Or no, I don't think I have. What? I don't think I have. I can't do the pop-out chat and have mod controls at the same time, but maybe somebody else can take care of it. But if it gets too bad, we'll figure out something to do with it. Let's see. Yeah, so I think that's all I have for announcements. And again, if you've offered to do graphics before art, email me again. Like I could have missed it. I figured this is a little different because most of the people offering the help in the past have been doing like real artistic stuff. Like sometimes those are for the title screens of Game Dungeon but this is much more of like a graphic design sensibility, like less of a freeform art thing, more about like you understand fonts, layout, color, that sort of thing. Let's see. Oh, someone's saying they used to have a bot that would ban that kind of bot. AI is probably going to get good with that. I think, yeah, we'll have defensive AIs also. So, uh, yeah. But yeah, actually, you can. I'm fine with the chat veering off with other discussions, but that's obviously a spam thing. But if you were trying to like promote your game or a mod, and you thought it would, my audience might like it, I would let that slide. That's all right. Uh, okay, so I should get to questions. I think it might go a little smoother this time. I had time to look at a lot of them and make some notes. So, let's see. That's not always the case. Okay, yeah, well, yeah. The first one is one I had to think about. What's a piece of media that, for all intents and purposes, is mediocre, but does one or a few things just right that you love it? Well, I don't know if I loved it, but okay. Well, no, okay. One of them I do that I love it. Uh, Red Faction Guerrilla. I think for all intents and purposes, it's a so-so game, but the destruction is just first rate, and that just carries the game. like if if that game was just didn't have that great destruction, I'd say like, yeah, it's all right. It's not that great, but the level of destruction and physics it has, it's like, oh yeah, that's a great game. So yeah, that's one I definitely had. And actually, my first thought, I wouldn't say I love the game, but and I think it qualifies as mediocre, but it does one thing great, was the pathfinding in Requital. And it's not unique, and I've heard that's not difficult to do what it did, but again, like I showed in the video, like I did one click from the other embankment of a river, and you see him walk across the bridge, and then go off. That was just one click. And I remember seeing comments of people saying like they wish World of Warcraft or other MMOs had stuff like that. I mean, I guess it's a design decision that they don't do that, but it's not. It's certainly a quality of life thing. I think I have seen it on that level in a few other games, but I don't remember the other ones. But yeah, I think a lot of RPG players like that feature. If you see, I want to walk to that hill there, click, and then just let the character go. Yeah, someone's saying no game comes close to Red Faction Guerrilla. Yeah, if you took out the destruction physics of that game, I think it would just be okay. I mean, it wouldn't be bad. It'd still be fun, but like the plot's nothing special. The atmosphere is all right for Terraform Mars, but combat's like okay. But man, the destruction, it carries the game, and it even comes to a finale. I remember when I got to the finale, I was thinking like, I was playing it years after the fact. I was thinking, were computers able to handle this? Like the level of destruction for the finale, they just go all in on the physics. So, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I think with the pathfinding, it's not that complex to have the character just kind of find its own path, but it's just most developers don't do that. Maybe it's a performance issue, but yeah, I remember that standing out. There might be a few more. If the chat has suggestions for games like that too, go ahead. I didn't have that many. I mean, what like a really standout feature in an otherwise mediocre game? I guess yeah. This one isn't a great answer, but I was also thinking like I kind of liked some of the outdoor areas in Hellgate, London, how they were handling it. Like it looked really. I mean, I feel like as a whole, the game ended up being mediocre, but like for that sort of modular design, I felt they were doing a good job on the post-apocalyptic vibe. I mean, I don't know. That's why I couldn't just like kind of toss off that game. It had like just enough with the aesthetics going for it that it just intrigued me. So, but the rest of it, I'm not sure I'd endorse much of it. So, let's see. I'm trying to figure out which way the camera's tilted a bit, but Uh-oh, we have another one. I think we should just ban. If mods are active, we can just ban that. Yeah, this one's for crypto. You can just ban that phrase. I'm not even gonna say that to give them the .com thing that they're referring to. But okay, keep moving on with questions. But let's see. Somebody said BDO. When people use acronyms, I don't know what they're referring to unless it's a common one or one I'm familiar with the lingo. Yeah, well, somebody's saying Remnant from the Ashes reminds them of Hellgate London atmosphere-wise. Yeah, that's one I plan to play, although that might, if that's another one that's like a Souls sensibilities in terms of the mechanics, I might just use a trainer on it, so. If there's no mods, I can turn the chat off and go into mod mode, but we'll see. Or maybe make I'm CIA a mod. I've seen him a bunch. So he might abuse the power, but he would get rid of the he would get rid of the spam, I think. Let's see. You seem to have watched, played, read a lot, but is there any franchise you actively follow? Movies, games, books, etc. What I mean to say is, do you consider yourself a fan of something? Yeah, I'm a fan of things, but I'm a cautious fan. I mean, I guess what is, just because I like something or something in a series gives me no confidence whatsoever that the next one's going to be good because I've seen too many bad sequels that I'm not convinced by. So I just assume like, well, I hope the next one will be good, but let's see. I was thinking, well, I mean, I haven't seen the newer ones, but Mystery Science Theater 3000 has been consistently good for just years and years when it was on the air. So yeah, I'm a fan of that. Yeah, well, Star Trek is an example where who knows how the new ones are gonna. I am interested in some of the newer ones. Like, I like the title "Strange New Worlds," but they. I hope they live up to that title. I hope that's definitely the direction I hope Star Trek goes in. I ended up watching some of Picard, and it's like the first episode was like okay, it was different, but it's like, okay, well, maybe we could go with this, and then it fell off pretty quickly for me. It's like, this is not really what I into in Star Trek. We're making this like some character drama that's not really that good, and yeah, and then they were like just sort of disregarding what Star Trek is about. Like, I think this, like, they had this woman who worked with them, like, giving them this kind of resentment speech about how Picard has more. It's like, you have friggin' replicators. They don't even use money on Earth. Like, I mean, it's like they were just, I don't know. It just seemed like it was just missing the point of Star Trek entirely. So, yeah, it makes me not want to watch more of it, actually. So I'm, yeah, again, I'm, as somebody else put it, I'm in there for the anomaly of the week episodes. That's what I'm about. Well, for fans, I mean, again, I don't have as much reference since I haven't read the comics, but I might. One of the things I'm definitely looking forward to, if it happens, it sounds like it's been in limbo, would be Judge Dredd Mega City 1. I heard they're making a series out of that, and I'm thinking, yeah, let's have it. Because, like, what was it, Dredd the movie was pretty great, though I felt like it was a little more, but it was a little too conservative on the sci-fi aspect of it. Like you got the feeling it could be just sort of a more modern, present day dystopia, just with some larger buildings and stuff. Whereas like the older Judge Dredd movie with Stallone, they leaned in more to the sci-fi element of it, and I like that. However, it was definitely more corny, but I liked a lot what they were doing with the atmosphere. So it made me think, yeah, try again. Let's have. So maybe we can get a mesh of that, like have the intensity of Dread, the movie, but have more of the sci-fi elements of the comics and the the Stallone movie level. I did play was it Judge Dredd versus Death, the video game, and that was pretty cool. They definitely, that was one of the best aspects of it, is that they were showing off Mega City 1, and it looked neat. So I get the feeling that was staying true to the comics from what I could tell. So yeah, okay, somebody's saying Old Dread didn't even show any of the city scope. It was just dusty hallway. Yeah, well, the yeah, well, but I think they had a few shots of that. Well, he says Old Dread. I think they're. I remember in the Stallone movie, they had a few shots that kind of gave an idea of the scope of the city. The game probably did the best job of that. In fact, even for when it came out, the game was really impressive. But yeah, another example of something I'm a fan of, but I have very reserved confidence how it will go, is Blade. I mean, the first movie, I think. I mean, none of them are like perfect, I think, but like the first movie is pretty good, kind of uneven in spots. The second one, I kind of feel similarly. Third one wasn't that great, and I think they're gonna reboot it for the Marvel universe. However, not knowing much about him, I don't even know his name, but I've seen him before. The actor they're casting for the lead in Blade, I feel like just looking at him, he doesn't seem like the right person to me as far as casting, because he's always had like this sort of like this look of vulnerability to his face, like the eyebrows kind of go up more. I mean, it's not a knock against him, but it's really going to test his acting chops, because that's not what you want for Blade. Like with Blade, you want like this feeling of just kind of like complete discipline. I mean, Snipes set the mold for that in the movies, but complete discipline. Just if anything, he's gonna have a problem holding back his resentment or hatred of vampires. So, and just absolute fearlessness. Not a very emotionally vulnerable person for what you want from Blade. Is all business. I'm not encouraged by the casting, but hey, maybe he could prove me wrong. Really good actors can do that. Really good actors can surprise you. So we'll see. Let's see some other fan things I like. Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of the old sock puppet show on MTV, the Syphil and Ollie show. Oh yeah, I need to catch up on them. Was it the FP? So far, I've only seen the first two movies, and they've made a third one, and the fourth one's coming out this year. So yeah, the first two, I feel like the second one wasn't quite as good as the first, but it wasn't for lack of trying. It definitely kept the torch burning. So yeah, I like the FP movies that I've seen so far. Yeah, we have some quotes from Syphil and Ollie in the chat there. Well, yeah, I mentioned before I love Aeon Flux, the show. The movie, it didn't hit the same level as the show. It was just okay, but it didn't live up to like the highs of the show at all, I thought. Well, Beavis and Butthead, fan of that. That's an excellent quote. So he's asking, what song do you feel is the best guitar solo? That's an excellent question, and I wouldn't even know the name. I would need to see a top list, and I can maybe pick it out. You give me a top 10 or top 20 list, it's probably in there. So, but then like their pick is Freebird, but actually Freebird isn't really my favorite song. Let's see. Because a lot of songs I don't even know the name of, but I've heard the tunes before. Okay. Oh yeah, somebody's saying no mention of Wallace and Gromit. Yeah, well, see, that's another example where I love the original shorts for Wallace and Gromit, all of them. And then like the movies, it's like okay, it's some of it's good, some of it's kind of weak. It's kind of a mix. So um, Sam and Max. I've read the comics and I've played Sam and Max Hit the Road. I think I even saw a little bit of an animated TV show they had, but that wasn't quite as good. I need to play the newer 3D games that they made. I think Telltale put those out. But the thing is, it's like I was kind of off-put by them because the voice acting for Sam and Max Hit the Road was so perfect. Like it's like they just like I love the tone they had for yeah, they gave Max his Jersey accent and like Sam had this kind of like gruff detective, maybe kind of based off of Bogart. Well, I mean, not quite Bogart, but yeah, it just, it was perfect. And then it just sounded off for me in the 3D one. So I was like, so that kind of killed it for me a little bit, but I should give it another pass at it. Yeah, casting can make a difference for different things. I'm trying to think of some other things series I'm fans of. Well, I like I mean, well, yeah, that's another example where it changed. The George Romero Living Dead movies, because Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead are all great. And then the later one, I liked Land of the Dead. It was different. It was definitely a different style, but I definitely enjoyed Land of the Dead. And then I didn't really like the others after that. It was like, was it Diary of the Dead? And there was another one. I think it was like on an island. Might have been Isle of the Dead, or I don't know. But yeah, it kind of varied. So you never know. It's like, oh, and this thing, Return of the Living Dead 1 and 2 are great. Return of the Living Dead, well, that's not George Romero, but Return of the Living Dead is amazing. And then 2, I remember not being that great, actually. But yeah, the Return of the Living Dead is just amazing. It's like one of the best horror comedies made, in my opinion. So yeah, it can vary so much on a series or an intellectual property that you never know. It's like I heard one podcast I used to listen to a while back. It was a Maximum PC podcast where they talk about, where they talked about, they were debating like what was the best trilogy of movies made, and the definitive answer they came to was Lord of the Rings, because the quality is consistent across all 3 of them, the movies. Whereas, I mean, I guess you could argue original Star Wars, though we got a bit Ewok heavy in Return of the Jedi, I guess. But yeah, I guess you could. But it's rare that a trilogy maintains the quality that high, across all 3. It's usually by the 3rd one, it's not as good. Whereas Lord of the Rings stayed. Yeah, I agreed with their answer for what I can think of. The quality stays like consistent across all 3. See, somebody's saying they didn't mind Terminator. See, I wouldn't say so, because Terminator is pretty good. Terminator 2 is amazing. And Terminator 3 is all right. Yeah, it's okay. It's not that great, but it's kind of a letdown compared to 2. Let's see. I got distracted by the chat there. Let's see. Yeah, sometimes saying Terminator 3 is dumb fun. Yeah. I want to say the best scene of Terminator 3 is kind of... Yeah, Terminator 3 had more comedy. It had good comedy in it. Some good comic moments. I want to say the best scene of 3 that I remember is the fire truck when he's hanging... where they tried to make up for not as strong writing, I think, with just sheer destruction. And it was working for a while. I remember the fire truck scene got my attention, so where it's plowing through buildings. Yeah, somebody's mentioned, or I had a, I don't know what you would call it. I mean, it's not exactly dyslexia, but where you see two common words and your brain thought for a second it was saying something else. I thought people were mentioning alien, and yeah, alien doesn't really work too because, again, in my opinion, first one starts off great, but then it gets it kind of drags out for the bottom half. Aliens is amazing, and then Alien 3 just kind of, it's almost like kind of depressing. But that's not even a trilogy now because they kept going, and it kind of improved after Alien 3 because Alien Resurrection is dumb fun. I think that, like, it's another dumb fun one that I like. And then the Alien versus Predator movies were not good. And then you have Prometheus, which I liked. And then was it this, I forgot the name, but Alien Covenant, and it was all right. I think it was stronger than 3, but it's kind of a mix. Okay, so I should give more. That was just the second question. I'm gonna move a little more. Oh yeah. Do you agree with Yahtzee Croshaw that the early 2000s were a golden age of gaming? Or do you think it took too many steps back from the 90s? And they're giving examples: Microsoft neglecting the PC market, consolification of PC games, consolidation of AAA publishers, etc. I actually, as much as I play games, I actually don't always pay attention to like what publisher's doing what or who got bought by what developer. I mean, sometimes I notice, sometimes I don't. But I'd say no. I'd have to disagree. Because there were too many, at least on the PC, which is mostly where I was. Because I had to think about it. You did have a lot of quality, like, PlayStation 2 titles during that time. So I could see where you can make that argument for, like, the PlayStation. Because I remember thinking there were a lot of, like, PlayStation 2 titles that looked good, and then you had a lot. But for the PC, okay, during that time, you saw a decline of multiple genres. Like, I'd say there was a decline of action RPGs to some extent. There was a decline of real-time strategy games. There was a decline. I never played a lot of them, but there was a decline of like sort of your space sim flight games. Whereas in the 90s, you were seeing just everything almost. I mean, not of varying quality, but I mean, you did have some really great titles in the late 90s, early 2000s, like Deus Ex, System Shock 2, or just all kinds of things, actually, were kind of culminating. But then as you went by it, like all the stuff they mentioned, the consolification of many games was real. Like I'm thinking of like Supreme Commander 2. That wasn't even close to Supreme Commander in my opinion. In the follow-up I did, I think like was it the Lakeview Cabin where I was really just talking about Microsoft? You have that hole where I had to get some help like arranging the graphics because it was like a tear in games that were coming out for PC, and then Microsoft paid to put them on Xbox and just keep them off the PC. And like, yeah, that's not great for it. But I think like during the 2000s, you have more of like kind of chasing what was popular. So, they might have chased like Gears of War for a while, or Call of Duty. A lot of publishers were. So rather than like, okay, well, Call of Duty did this, we're gonna have our own first-person shooter that goes in another direction, another vision. It's like, no, you had a lot of title chasing, I think, in the 2000s. I mean, as for Golden Age, I think now it's it's simultaneously better and worse than ever because you have the destruction of games and more monetization, but at the same time, it's like a complete renaissance for like independent developers. So now it's just like everything. So, and yeah, I don't know. I think in the 90s you have a lot of variety, and the technology's evolving rapidly and coming to a point where we can kind of keep up with some of these visions that wasn't really possible in the 80s. And then by the 2000s, that stuff's getting locked down, because even if the technology's there, like the publishers are kind of calling the shots more than like game developers trying to make a good game. So I bet if you went through it by era, you would see a much wider variety of genres for great games in the 90s than you would in the 2000s. Because I mean, there's great games in like every decade or sometimes even year, but it's you saw more variety, I think. Oh yeah, decline of adventure games, graphic adventure games. That was another thing that happened in the 2000s. Like it never died, but it absolutely did decline. So yeah, you saw, when I can think of like half a dozen genres that declined in the 2000s, I think that's an indicator that it wasn't, I don't consider it the golden age. But again, there were good titles also released during that time. But okay, I'm paraphrasing a bit because to try to keep the language cleaner for Twitch, so I don't have to put the mature rating on. But they're saying, what was your biggest oh crap moment? If I think I've mentioned it before, but first one that comes to my mind, so it would probably be the biggest, would be when I moved to Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I got a job there. That was when I was doing tech support for Bell South. I had been there a few weeks. I got an apartment, and I knew that they did nuclear research there. Like that was one of the places that in Los Alamos and maybe someplace else, I think it was one of the places where the atomic bomb was developed or researched. And so nuclear research had continued. And I started hearing these sirens, like citywide, going off while I was at home, like, before work. And like, I didn't have a car then. It was my bicycle. So I'm thinking, it's like, oh, wow, is this it? It's like, are they going to have like a nuclear, like, am I dead already? And it ended up, I found out later that it was, it was just a test they did like at the start of the month, every month. But I didn't know that. So I'm just hearing citywide sirens going off like it's a bomb raid or something. And I know I'm not super far away from nuclear research. So I'm like, oh wow, well, so I'm saying, oh crap, a nuclear spill, or maybe like or maybe a meltdown. I mean, it could be. And I remember I was talking to my friend on Instant Messenger at the time. I said, if I go offline, I'm probably dead. Like, so it ended up being nothing. But yeah, that's what comes to mind. That's the one that really stood out to me. It was a false alarm, so that's good. I've had plenty of them, but I just forgotten the details of most of them, so it couldn't have been that big a deal. Because, I mean, there have been one or two times where I've overslept or something that was a problem, but it wasn't so monumental that it just scarred me to a level that I remember even now, so. Okay, more questions. Ross, what would you consider to be an absolute nightmare scenario for any media property? And they're saying them being stuck in rights limbo with a corporation that refuses to do anything with the IP. Yeah. Okay, and there's another person saying, or what happened with The Matrix, that the latest one was a deboot, like a creator being forced to continue the franchise and then intentionally running it into the ground. It was like having to put down the pet yourself. Well, yeah, I saw the new Matrix. I didn't care for it. I thought it was pretty bad. I was thinking I heard there was some people saying there was like a meta aspect of it to it, but maybe I missed. But I figure, okay, regardless, just as a movie watching experience, as to whether I enjoy the movie, I want to say it's one of the worst sequels I've seen. And I was thinking, uh, like I would it wasn't this bad, but I was trying to think of like, okay, what's the worst sequel I've seen that were like the original was pretty good. And I thought Lawnmower Man 2. Lawnmower Man 2 is really bad. And The Lawnmower Man's a pretty good movie. So that's it wasn't quite that level, but it's like, wow. It's like they were just, it just, again, maybe there's something I'm missing so to it, but if you need that context, do you really want to target Matrix fans with that level of meta understanding that they're not going to get it? I mean, it's not how I would have handled the Matrix sequel. I mean, it takes some brainstorming to think of, you'd have to do something different. Like you have to, I mean, yeah, you could say they did something different, but different in a way something different that's going to appeal to fans of the original. Because, okay, what was the original about? It's about like, reality is not what it seems. Kung fu and martial arts all over the place, and we can bend reality to enhance that. Gunfights like you've never seen. Special effects like you've never seen. Fantastic soundtrack. Really stylish kind of stuff. So you want to hit all those kinds of beats, but then take the plot and really just do a 90-degree turn with the plot. Like try to really think of something else. And it's like, man, so they did do something different. I'll give them that, but it's like, it wasn't, it doesn't appeal to all those other yeah, I didn't even notice because that wasn't where my mind was at with it, but somebody pointed out that like how Neo never fires a gun in that. And it's like, yeah, whereas the original Matrix is iconic for gunfights. So yeah, you kind of want to work that in somewhere, but because you don't want to be too derivative, but you need a whole different plot line, I would think. Like just, I'm not sure what you would do with it because you don't want to just have like one new element and then retread all the same beats. If you're rebooting it that long afterwards, you got to do something to keep it fresh, I guess. Or yeah, I was trying to think like, what's the best sequel that from after the original that's happened like decades afterwards. And I want to say it might be Ash versus the Evil Dead. Like, because the TVs, I got to see that. The TV series, it was pretty solid. Like, if you're a fan of Evil Dead, I don't think you're going to be too disappointed by the, like, they managed to pick up the beats and kept it going. There's Tron Legacy, but I feel like the writing was kind of weak in Tron. Like, I feel like Tron Legacy is like all style and not much substance. But so I don't know. Okay, somebody's saying Rocky. That could be. I haven't seen the newer Rockies. I was never a huge Rocky fan. Although now that you mention it, the Rambo or Rambo 4 is very solid. Yeah, and that happened. There was a big gap between 3 and 4, and I mean, I think my favorite is First Blood, and then my second favorite would be Rambo, like the Rambo 4. You know, that one was solid. Yeah. Again, I can't comment on Rocky, so yeah, I saw 5. It felt weaker. I guess they just couldn't. Somebody's saying I actually like Rambo 4. Hell yeah, I like Rambo 4. I mean, it's a solid movie. I mean, it's over the top. Yeah, okay. There is definitely a tone shift between First Blood and all the other Rambos. First Blood is actually kind of a thoughtful movie, and it's not over the top violent. Actually, I mean, it's kind of just I would call it like an action suspense drama kind of movie. where you're kind of looking more at the personality of someone who's sort of, shell shocked from the war and comes back and he and doesn't get the homecoming he hoped for because the war is kind of hated, and you kind of examining his psychology of that. It's uh yeah, so it's much more thoughtful, whereas everything after that is just kind of like more schlocky. But I felt like had the four had the over the top violence, but it also I felt like was pretty tasteful as like an action movie. Like it starts off in the beginning with him. I forget where he is in Asia, but I remember the music and the cinematography there was just. They had the Rambo theme, but they kind of mixed it in with like a more like Eastern Asian theme to it. I was thinking, man, and you had like the light hitting the water as they're kind of showing him on a boat. That you get the feeling that he's kind of found some of his own peace. Being like a snake wrangler out in the jungle, away from a lot of civilization, and then like the music's reflecting that, and it's like, oh man, this is really nicely done. Like so, and then like he's hesitant about wanting to get back into some sort of violent situation, but when he realizes it's become necessary, he just goes all in 100%, and it's just like wow from an action perspective. So yeah, I really liked the Rambo 4. I mean, yeah. Well, there are people praising the Dread movie earlier. A friend of mine saw that, uh, and I was trying to think of like movies that had that same kind of vibe, and I recommended was it Mad Max Fury Road to him, and I also recommended the Rambo, or Rambo 4, or whatever year it came out. But okay, I should get back to the original question. I was responding to like the reply underneath that. A nightmare scenario for any media property. I mean, I don't know that much because I've never really been in possession of something that I didn't have control of. But I mean, yeah, like what you meant. I think the nightmare scenario would be something that you developed, and then a corporation's taking control over it, and then they're running it off a cliff, and you can see it. That's what's happening. Because I don't think that's what happened with the new Matrix, though, because I think it's more like we're going to make a new Matrix, period. And I think that was a mistake from the director. I forget their name, but it seems like if you didn't approve of what they were doing, you should just separate yourself from that and just do your own project, and just let somebody who really does want to try their best to make a good Matrix sequel make it. But I think they gave them a lot of creative control, and it's like, if they didn't want to do it, I feel like if they didn't want to make a new Matrix, they should have give it to somebody who did. Like, I don't know. I guess it's like a personal reasons, but yeah, yeah, I don't know. But the stuff that's in limbo is extremely frustrating. And this isn't, well, I guess this is a media property. One of the ones that I kind of like most want to be released actually isn't even like a fiction or storytelling thing. It's the code for 3D vision by NVIDIA. Like, they developed that would have incredible use for VR, and they're just sitting on it. Like they just killed it. Like, and it's just like, damn it. Like, why the hell can't they release that and just, or just, I don't know. I mean, there are alternatives, but I mean, Vorpex is doing its best, and then there's Super Depth 3D, but Super Depth 3D is technically inferior to to the other methods, because it kind of, I mean, it's definitely better. I will take it over nothing, absolutely. But it's kind of like a second place thing compared to like actual separate images for each eye. Instead, it wraps it around and just sort of stretches the sides, so you get more artifacts. And also the interface for it is like the worst. Either I'm doing something wrong, or it's absolutely the worst interface for anything VR ever, because it wasn't really intended for VR. It just kind of piggybacked off of Reshade, and then they're able to make it work in VR. So it's a real pain to set up, but or configure rather. It's easy to set up. It's a real pain to configure. But yeah, that's one I wish would just. That's what they got my hopes up a while back when this hacker group said they hacked NVIDIA's code and they were gonna release like everything unless they got this ransom, and then it just went quiet. So I guess either NVIDIA paid the ransom and it went away, or else they were bluffing. Man, they got my hopes up. I was thinking, oh good, now we'll have 3D vision out in the open. And I remember people were saying, oh, this is useless. You can't use it for anything. It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, you can't use it for anything that's a business or that's legal, but you could have underground drivers for that stuff to uncrack, or you could reverse engineer it to the point, make it a lot easier to get like some quality stereoscopic drivers in there. So, yeah, I mean, NVIDIA sent their hitman. Yeah, I guess that's option number 3. But yeah, I don't have much experience. I mean, even when I was at Machinima, as much as they tried to screw me later, they were never like trying to tell me to like how you should do something with the shows necessarily. Well, I guess they did want me to make a trailer for the tunnel, but that's not too outrageous a request. I mean, they weren't riding backseat trying to dictate everything. I get the feeling if I had done something really off kilter for my target audience, they might have interfered with that, but that wasn't my intention anyway. So they kind of know what to expect. So. Yeah, so I was saying I should be a Linux and NVIDIA user to really understand. Yeah, that would absolutely. I saw so many comments saying otherwise, but I can't believe that wouldn't help Linux on some level, because it wouldn't help it officially. It would not help it officially, but you could see underground drivers emerge. Like, it's like, okay, fine. Like, the only way you can find this is through some forum, and it's links to a torrent. You know, you could have stuff going on like that. But yeah, it might tarnish. People are concerned about tarnishing the Linux name. It's like, well, as I understand it, the non-proprietary NVIDIA drivers on Linux are pretty rough as it is. So I don't know if I don't think there'd be much damage done. But I might get some emails about that. We'll see. Let's see. What do you think about the developers of Spellbreak releasing a community version? Server client, DRM free edition of the game, and debug files after the game was commercially shut down. Well, I mean, that's I mean, it's probably the gold standard for how it should be for if you have to shut down a game. You know, just, yeah, we can't support this anymore. We're done. Here's everything you could possibly want to keep this going. Yeah, I don't really mention those on Dead Game News because I don't want to like skew the perspective of things, like, you know, one victory versus 100 defeats. But I am glad when that happens. I don't want people to think it's like 50-50 or, oh, it's getting better. And it's like, no, it's still very bad. This is the exception to the rule. However, I am glad they're doing that. In fact, you know, if you're releasing the debug files, I mean, that's above and beyond. Like, I'd say in a sane world, what should be expected is you can play it in some fashion. whether it's a kind of stripped down version of it or a patch or something. If you're releasing the source code or again debug things or just extra stuff, even better. That's above and beyond in my eyes. But and if you're not releasing a workable version, but you are like giving the community enough to work with, like again, a bunch of debug notes and maybe like some like the server files, even though they won't run in like an x86 or something like that, or won't run on normal Windows, or they're intended for like server shards. That's still very good. That's good enough. Because then you're giving coders an honest. It doesn't help like the end consumer directly, but there's usually enough coders out there that they can kind of resurrect it into something usable. So that's good enough. But anything less than that, it's getting really bad. And that's unfortunately the norm. Since when did you start using the internet regularly? And they're saying it was around 1999 for them. It was sort of, it's hard to say how regular it was for me because it was sort of spotty because I was on dial-up. And, I had to share the landline with my parents, and my mother would talk to relatives all the time on the phone. So it's like I kind of had to compete for that. But yeah, I think it sounds like 98, 99 was around a similar time. I think at first I primarily used it to get shareware games that I could download. So, and then just other info. But yeah, because you kind of on dial-up, the amount of data you get was limited. So it's, or rather, it wasn't limited so much. It was very slow. So you had to like really pick and choose what you were getting. Actually, one of the things I remember downloading a lot of later was what was it? Mortal Kombat spoof images where people would make up their own fatalities. I remember finding that interesting. Let's see. Oh, and then later soundtracks that you couldn't get anywhere else. Yeah, I remember I had a copy of the Need for Speed 3 soundtrack that was never sold. And I just found like this weird link that led to it. It's like it was CD quality, or it wasn't CD quality, but it was 44 kilohertz quality from like a planned unreleased album. I was like, oh wow, this is a find. So, but I mean, it was MP3, but still, it was better than what was in the game. Did you ever find out who is the guy in the map of Baldies? For what well, that'll get covered in the follow-up, but I mean Baldies, but unless I'm drawing a blank of what you're referring to, I think I was looking to see if there was like hidden imagery, and best I can tell, there wasn't. So, but I might be forgetting something else you're referring to. Okay. This is sort of what I answered earlier. I was getting the questions mixed up. They're saying, what are some properties that you like that are being held hostages by companies that refuse to utilize? That was my first thought, the 3D vision by NVIDIA, because they're just sitting on it. I mean, NVIDIA does all kinds of stuff that's not helpful for consumers and the market, where they'll have these great advances, but then they intentionally try to tie it into the ecosystem, which I understand is business, but then 3D vision is something they shut down. Like they're not using it. So that's, I mean, I don't like that they do that either. I wish it was all open standards and they let the yeah. And NVIDIA is unfortunately, kind of roping me in more and more with the ecosystem, because for like older games, there are anti-aliasing options you have on NVIDIA that you don't on AMD. And then for newer stuff, well, I don't care about ray tracing. I do care about AI stuff. I am doing AI. I do fiddle with AI projects, and so much of that is in CUDA. And I don't think you can do. I think AMD released a translator, but you still have to have access to the code and actually change the code yourself. So if you're just an end user, I'm not sure if that would be really helpful. Maybe it exists, I just don't know about it. That'd be really helpful for AMD if there could just be a wrapper that for CUDA to like OpenCL or something for that. Because yeah, AI is good stuff. I mean, for what you can do with it. And that does appeal to me, so. See, somebody's saying frame generation is pretty cool too. That one, it is and it isn't, because as a concept, it's great, and same for DLSS. However, that's also like game dependent. So I'm a much bigger fan of like universal solutions or stuff like that. So, yeah, so it's like I like what they're doing, but I kind of wish that stuff was a little more open also. But yeah, I hope AMD can kind of catch up on the AI front at least. Because that's usually what AMD, how they pull ahead lately with graphics is they'll like I think, well no it was they leapfrog because AMD did MLAA first and then NVIDIA did FXAA, but NVIDIA did G-Sync first and then AMD charged ahead with making with getting FreeSync adopted. I'm trying to think of like there's other stuff that like AMD was first out the door with. I mean, it kind of changes, but sometimes they come up with like a more open standard and can compete against Nvidia that way by reaching more developers. So so that way it doesn't have to, because developers don't really want to lock off half their audience or a significant portion for their game unless they're getting paid off. They probably don't even want to do that either. They just would rather have more people play the game. So if they can implement something similar with the technology that you can run on any system, including AMD, developers generally like that. Yeah, that's right. Mantle was turned into Vulkan. Yeah, that's another one. Because that was with, that was when DirectX 11 had been out a while, and we hadn't heard anything about 12, so they did Mantle, but. Okay, well, I'll answer this. I usually get the live questions later in the chat, but sometimes if I see it and it's a good question, I go for it. They're saying Epic is shutting down the Unreal Tournament master servers as removing the old Unreal single-player games from online stores. Why do you think Epic cares so little about their legacy? I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, that would be kind of like id Software shutting down like Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, and Quake, all the originals. So like you can't even buy them. You can only get them through like old copies or abandonware. Or what? Or what was another example I was trying to think of, like, or Rockstar like not allowing the original Grand Theft Auto like 1 and 2 or London like to be sold anymore. It's like, what? Like you have like or I guess 3D Realms is that part of Gearbox now? Shutting down the old Duke Nukem and later Duke Nukem 3D games, It's like, what? Like these are the games, one of the games that like your company is known for. Like, wherever you are now, like this has become a name in gaming, these games, and that's what they're shutting down. I mean, it's literally the Unreal Engine 5. Why is it called the Unreal Engine? Because it was for the game Unreal. I mean, it's bizarre. And the thing is, Unreal, well, both Unreal and Unreal Tournament and some of the I mean, those are all pretty good games. I mean, Unreal, the original Unreal, I think is amazing in some ways. I mean, other ways it's just kind of okay, but I mean, the atmosphere on it's incredible. I mean, especially for the time. The music is some of the best in gaming, for my taste. And then Unreal Tournament's just solid across the board. I mean, any metric you're looking at, really. I mean, okay, somebody's saying Gearbox 2K already took down the original 3D and the old games, at least from Steam and GOG. Is that the case? Why are they doing that? I mean, you can just run it on DOSBox. It just, like, even if you're not I know, like, big company. Well, here, let's see Steam. I know at big companies they're uninterested in, or a lot of them can be uninterested. Oh, come on, why can't I see this? I can't find the search option on Steam. What's going on? Oh, there's the box. Okay, it was just slow loading. Duke Nukem 3D. I guess. Duke Nukem 3D 20th anniversary world tour. So, okay, so maybe they're delisting their original, but they have like a anniversary edition or pack where they're all together. That's fine. I mean, that's not a big deal in my opinion. I mean, I know for preservation purists that matters, but as long as like the remaster is like pretty true to the original, that's not a big deal. But yeah, a lot of big companies, they're not interested in projects that can just earn a small but reliable profit. They just want the big stuff. But it's like in that case, Duke Nukem is a name in gaming, and it's almost like you're doing a small amount of continued advertising and getting paid a small amount for it to have it out there, you know. So it's just, and then it's difficult to put a price on PR damage for that. I will say the original. Okay, somebody's saying, how much do you think I'll jump into questions. How much do you think killing old games is caused by developers wanting people to stop playing old games and buy new games as opposed to other factors? I would, if I were to just take a stab in the dark, I would say it's like 10%. They actually want you to stop playing those games and buy new ones. I think most of the time, it's usually a niche audience that's still playing the old stuff. And I think most of the time they just don't want to devote any resources to it. So they can kill it with no legal consequence because it hasn't been tested by the courts. So that's what they do. It's kind of, I think they just don't care. I think EA especially has that kind of reputation where they usually don't come after people doing mod projects too hard. There's been a few occasions where it was sort of blurring the line. It's like they just don't care. They just don't care. Like they had like the Warhammer Return of Reckoning project. I think for a few of them, I think for a couple of the Battlefields, the developers, they kind of gave them their blessing, even though they didn't really give them any help. So yeah, EA just doesn't care, is what I've seen. They're just like, okay, the game, we're just pulling the plug, done, you know, and just move on. And I think that's the case for most of them. But yeah, okay. But with Unreal, lost my train of thought. Now, see, now I need to scroll up to the chat question, what it was saying to spark my. Oh yeah, that's another thing. I guess I'll find out more myself, but I know someone who's worked in Unreal, and he's constantly complaining about the stability sometime, and that Epic, they don't like to do like stable branches. Like sometimes in coding, you'll have like your long-term stable branch, which you might update a year or every couple years, that sort of thing. That, okay, this has a lot of bug fixes. We're pretty sure this is safe. So if you need something stable, you should probably use this. But then there'll be like experimental builds or nightly builds. I never got that actually, nightly builds. Like the expectation is you're developing so fast these should be nightly. I mean, it's like, it seems like only a few projects should have that kind of pacing. I mean, but anyway, that's maybe somebody can explain that to me. But just the point is, like, okay, here are more experimental features, but these could have bugs. This is basically beta software. But if you want like the newest, interesting stuff, that's the one you should use. And I think that's a great way of handling things. And then just every once in a while, go and just start nailing down as many bugs as you can. And apparently that is not Epic's company culture at all. It's like, I mean, it's just full speed ahead all the time. Bugs happen, whatever. Like, from what I can tell, that's their attitude about it. But Epic does weird things too. Like, how long did it take? I don't. Okay, I'm getting the features mixed up. They might not even have these now. It took years after launching the Epic Store to have either the ability to gift a game to a person or, because I'm mixing these two up, add more than one item to your basket, like do your virtual shopping cart. It's like, that's a really fundamental feature, I would think, for like a new game store. Like, I can understand things would be a little buggy, but it's like, I would have that on launch. I mean, if I was, I mean, that's something like I would think consumers are gonna want that. But, yeah. So it's like, what the hell is the reasoning to take years to get those features? I mean, like, yeah, some features are difficult, like, like trying to build like an additional social media ecosystem, or maybe a recommendations engine, or maybe having like add-on stuff, like your own versions of achievements and this is stuff I would call the fluff. That's not really that important to running the game, but some people care about that. Or like building forums and communities. Okay, yeah, that stuff can take more time. But if you're just someone who wants to buy the game and play it, those are two features you really want. You want people who want to buy a lot of games at once, and you want people who want to gift games to other people. That's just basic commerce, I would think. So I don't know what Epic's reasoning is. I'm glad they keep pushing the engine though, but I mean, it would be nice if things were more stable. But yeah, that's like, I don't know what the hell the reasoning is for just killing Unreal. Well, they're not really killing it, or most of them. The console ones, maybe. Because once again, it's a perfect example of how you can have a multiplayer game you can't kill. I guarantee you there are people right now playing online Unreal Tournament and Unreal Tournament 2004, and they didn't need to mod anything. They just needed to find a server. So, or probably not as many for 2003, because that one kind of got overshadowed by 2004, because they had a lot more going for it, I think. Though I guess you did have a unique mode in 2003, but like that kind of football style one. Although maybe I don't know. I'm getting them mixed up now, but the point is they can't destroy the game because it got out and they gave you the server tools when it released. So it's safe. It's just less convenient now. That's fine. If a game is less convenient to play years afterwards and support ends, that's fine. The support ended. It's normal to have a lifespan expectation for support. It's the support should not be synonymous with the ability to run the game in any fashion. That's the difference. It's just support, help. Okay, back to the submitted questions. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay, chat, weigh in on this question. They like Game Dungeon. They're saying, looking at older games, they're either underrated or have been lost is cool, they think. I was wondering if there are any books or references you use to find ones to cover, or if it's all from memory and experience. If it's the former, any recommendations? And they want to get to finding games themselves, but everything they look at is just recycles the same games over and over. Yeah, that can be a problem. So to answer your question, it's kind of both for me. For a lot of, I'd say the majority of game dungeons, it's just kind of been my, yeah, I guess the majority, a little bit. It's been just kind of my own experience and just encountering different games over the years. However, the what I, during that time when I would try to hunt down some of these games I remembered, I would go to abandonware sites. And abandonware sites are great for browsing through just all these titles you may have missed or never heard of. And again, I kind of don't want to name drop too many because I don't want them to get like too much attention, like you know, the dangerous kind of attention. So, but yeah, in fact, I did when Machinima shut down the YouTube channel and we lost all those videos. That was kind of the kick in the pants I needed to like go all in on just sort of hoarding or raiding abandonware archives. Not of all the games, but just all the ones that like, yeah, I might be interested in this. And I just stockpiled a few years ago. So I'm good for just years for that. For more modern games, this isn't the best way to do it. I gotta catch up. I was just sort of, I think I mentioned this in my games list video, but maybe I didn't elaborate enough though. I would just sort of browse PC gaming news on different sites, and sometimes titles would come up that, no, this sounds intriguing or something like that, and then I would just write down the titles. And the sites I would look at were PC Gamer, PC Games N, and Rock Paper Shotgun. They tended to have decent. PC Gamer is probably the worst for finding like off the beaten path titles. But now there's just so many, I'm not even sure the news sites can keep up. So I'm wondering what's the best way for like game discovery. I mean, especially on like something like Steam. You know, yeah, again, I'm trying to see what the chat's saying here. Okay, people are saying the Internet Archive. I don't know if that's I don't know if Internet Archive's great for finding ones you're looking for. I'm not sure if it's like the great for discovery, because what you want is like stuff all clumped in together where it's, let's see. Okay, somebody's saying Next Fest are a good way to find stuff. Yeah, I feel like we need like next level Steam searching level. Yeah, because I was sort of talking about this a while back. Oh, and apparently I was either confused or just it wasn't working. Now it's working. The ignore function mostly works for me now with that Steam add-on plugin. I forget the name of it. So sometime I eventually plan to go through Steam and just like hit like mass ignore on titles I'm not gonna forget about and just keep sifting through. I kind of need 3 categories. I need, or 3 or 4. I'm not getting quite what I want on Steam with that because I want games. Okay, I can ignore games because I have them, but you have to go through an extra menu to do that because I prefer it not to like, you know, like I don't want to ignore a whole bunch of games I like, but I don't want to see them because I already have them. And then the algorithm thinks, oh, well, I don't like all these action RPGs, so I should recommend them to me. Well, no, that's like the exact opposite of what I want. So I want that, like an easy to ignore, but I have them. Ignore because I'm not interested in them at all. Like a lot of like, for me personally, a lot of sports games or anime games. Let's see, or heavy sim games. Yeah, or what I would call like sort of a lot of kind of like what I would consider boring real life task sim games, you know, like mowing your lawn or to some extent like stuff that feels like an actual job. Those are my kinds of games. So that's just for me, but that could all be one category. So games, I don't want recommendations like these. And then I want the category of games I'm aware of, but I have not bought because they're still a little too pricey for my taste. So I just hide them from me unless they're below this price, or just hide them and I'll look for them during sales. So yeah, I would want those categories. And then everything else is just stuff I've never seen. And so it's like, okay, well, what? And then that would be the way to do it. So, let's see. And again, those are just my personal preferences. Obviously, if you like those games, you would. I'm not trying to. I'm a big fan of the long tail, so that what I like isn't necessarily what you like, and that sort of thing. So, I'm glad everybody can find their. I'm glad the potential's out there for everyone to find their own games they're after. But are you checking your own list, Ross? Yes, I am. I am. I had kind of a big update of that actually. I think it was around like I did that after I did the Christmas, for the Fahrenheit episode, because I was putting that off, and it's like I saw like, okay, the sales are last. There was a GOG sale and there was a Steam sale going on, and they both lasted until January. So I thought, perfect, I can devote my attention to this after the video's done, and then just. But yeah, yeah, if there are better tools for that, it's kind of, we're almost getting back to what I would call like almost like the Commodore 64 days, or I guess Atari too, but where it's just kind of the Wild West, where there's just so much out there, but you have to look for it, So I guess that's kind of cool in a way that if you're into like game exploration, there really is stuff out there that barely anyone's seen, and that might be decent. I mean, it's not going to be like a AAA game or anything, but yeah. So I'm not sure what the best way to go about it is. I'm trying to catch up on a lot of game news actually, because I've fallen behind on some sites. Though I blame PC Games and because they're a great website, but they're a great news source, but their website has that infinite scrolling crap. And it used to be you can enter in a URL to go back like hundreds of pages, but they changed their code and they got rid of that. So now the only way I can check old news I need to catch up on is I middle click on the site and I drag the mouse down so it just kind of continues scrolling, and then I go and do something else. If I'm on another window, I guess I could do that in a virtual machine. Maybe I should do that. And I just let it scroll there for like 20 minutes. And it's like, okay, now I've gone back a year or two, and then now so it's a very inefficient way of doing it. So, and then I'll scroll game news for a while, and then I'll write down the date I left off at. And then so if I could resume it later. So I hope to eventually catch back up on PC Games End, but it's a real pain. So I'm just saying it'll be out of memory if you do that. No, it won't. I did it for 45 minutes before. However, do it on Firefox and not Chrome. Chrome started choking out the farther I got. So, I mean, I'm sure there are plugins you could use to get around that. But yeah, that's my general tip. Do it on Firefox and not Chrome. They're saying it's so annoying. Why do they even pull crap like that? Well, it's because they're just focusing on, in fairness, they are a news site, so most people aren't interested in old news, but I have the mentality a good game's a good game, and sometimes it's just, news on old stuff. So yeah, a lot of their news can be relevant for me. That's how I found out about that Super Nintendo emulator where they managed to like hack in a form of widescreen support. And like, I was like, oh wow, that's so cool for that they got that. So yeah, I mean, most of their news I'm not interested in, and some stuff is absolutely overrepresented because you're gonna see a million articles on stuff like Fortnite or Rocket League or what are some other like really, or Apex Legends, or a lot of or just any AAA game that's getting a lot of money. So yeah, you see a disproportionate amount of stuff, but you also see the obscure stuff too. So. But yeah, that's the best answer I have at the moment. But we can do better for sure with Discovery. Um, oh yeah, I mentioned this on Twitter, but I didn't really mention it elsewhere. I quoted Carmack had a statement on. I was on the fence of doing a Dead Game News on this, but I thought like I should just stick back to the videos I'm trying to get made. Yeah, the game Echo VR, it's either shutting down or it got shut down. And that's like, I think, one of the bigger casualties for, I think, like Oculus's platform. Or is it Metaverse? Yeah, it might have been Metaverse. And that was like the top esports game in VR, I think, or something, or one of the top ones. And Carmack made a statement like, basically kind of mirroring what I was saying. It's like, you should always have, well, here, I'll just check my Twitter since I have that. What would he say? Okay, I hate this. I can see my top. See, I don't use Twitter enough. Okay. Okay. The quote is: "Every game should make sure they still work at some level without central server support. Even when not looking at end-of-life concerns, being able to work when the internet is down is valuable." It says every game. That includes multiplayer. And he goes on to talk about like benefits of LAN and so on. However, he says at some level. So yeah, so there's no reason for the vast majority of games, even MMOs, you couldn't host an MMO and then just, but your computer can only handle about 20 people in the MMO. Well, if you just have your group of friends, that might be all you need, So, and then other people might set up custom servers so that you could handle lots, so like hundreds. So, yeah, so it's nice to hear Carmack be a voice of reason on that. But yeah, I'll just tell you what I was going to say in the video is that VR makes both Oculus, well, I guess less Facebook or Meta or whatever, because they're kind of newer to the club. But Oculus did some real damage to the VR space by just making it walled garden and requiring you to connect online to get basic functionality. Now you can put it off. I mean, best I can tell, and a few other VR manufacturers kind of followed suit with that, which I don't like at all. Best I can tell, there is literally no way to install drivers for like Oculus offline. So you can't just download the drivers, back them up, and then just use your VR offline. Now you can firewall it after you've connected to them directly, but you can't just do an offline install. It's like, honestly, I feel like that should be illegal for hardware. I mean, to intentionally block it. Because, I mean, I'm not aware of much other hardware that does it. I guess Razer does that for additional functionality. Where, like, okay, like if you have a Razer mouse or a keyboard, it will work as just a basic mouse or keyboard. But if you wanted to, like, tweak stuff, like add macros or maybe assign buttons or change the DPI settings, you have to connect online to them, is my understanding. I don't know. I've boycotted Razer ever since I heard about that. But yeah, somebody's saying basically every printer. Yeah, it might be now. I haven't had a printer in forever. I'm lucky enough to be. My printing needs are pretty light, and I'm near a print shop, so that it works. It's more economical for me to just go to the print shop for what I do. But yeah, printers are like incredibly hostile as far as DRM nowadays. But so I almost see Echo VR as like the canary in the coal mine. Like, what if later? Yeah, okay. What if later Oculus decided they're like, okay, it's been a good run, and it's never easy to shut down a game, but like, okay, we've decided to sunset the Oculus brand of products. It's like that would be an apocalypse because a whole lot of games are Oculus exclusives. And I'm not sure there's an emulator for that. Like, I think for a while there was like Revive, but I remember trying that not long ago because there was a program I wanted to try to run, and like the Revive didn't even work for me, or no, the Oculus installer didn't even work, or something like that. So it's just the whole thing's so precarious. Like it's, I mean, it'd be curious to see like what VR manufacturers can you do. Like let's say you download everything ahead of time. Can you do a side load or offline install on? I want to say it's the minority of them. And as much as I love VR, I absolutely hate that about it. They're taking hostages. The companies are holding VR as a hostage towards this kind of practice. I just absolutely hate it because VR is some of the coolest stuff I've done on a computer, whereas this practice is about as bad as it gets. So yeah. Oh yeah, I haven't watched this video yet. I've seen a couple of his before. People were mentioning apparently YouTuber Thrill Seeker gave a mention to the games as a service as fraud. Well, great. Even if he didn't give a mention, just sending that message is helpful. Yeah, I realized on Thrill Seekers, I saw one of his videos a while back. It was like the 7 types of VR users, and I didn't fit into any of those categories. I'm the VR user who's just I feel like I'm here with a crowbar cracking open like every old 3D game I can to get it working in stereoscopic. So unfortunately I'm a niche of VR users, but let's see. But yeah, I mean that was the main point I was gonna make if I did do a dead game news on it, is just that I think this is awful. It's happening. I'm glad there's awareness of it. I'm not sure what the way forward is. I guess the closest thing we have is Steam VR, but I'm not sure. I don't think you can do a fully offline install of Steam VR. Maybe you can, and it can be like easily cracked. Yeah, I mean, Steam VR is almost like what DirectX was to PC gaming when it was released. I mean, it's basically. It might be possible to do a full offline install like illicitly from it, but even if it wasn't, Valve's DRM is so much more lighter, and Valve is clearly fully in on VR, seeing as how they made a Half-Life game exclusive to VR. So I'd say Steam VR is pretty safe for now. So, whereas I don't get that feeling over any of the others. Okay, someone's saying OpenXR is supposed to be the standard VR API. Okay, maybe. I'm not sure. I get kind of mixed up with the APIs for VR, so. Hey, why do you do your streams exclusively on Twitch? Seems far too risky. Have you considered PeerTube or otherwise multi-streaming? Well, then I can't see the comments of any other place. Besides, if Twitch got shut, okay, let's say my account got suspended for something or shut down or whatever, then I probably would go to YouTube or someplace else. So the risk isn't that high, I don't think. In fact, the reason I do this on Twitch is to kind of mitigate the risk in case that were to happen on YouTube, where let's say my YouTube account got suspended or shut down. Well, then I would stream on Twitch, telling everybody where to go and keep doing that. So, But yeah, but also YouTube, it has some. Well, I think I mentioned this in a previous video chat. The other thing, so I'll keep moving on. Let's see. Oh yeah, this one might take a longer answer. Have you considered that with the explosive rise of AI generated media, that photographic evidence could cease to be proof of innocence in court? Think about how quickly AI generated media could be used to target public figures. The potential to implicate anybody in something nefarious is at an all-time high. Yeah, and there were some more AI questions. Okay, so I'll just stick to this one for now. I had not thought about that. However, I was thinking the other day that if AI got really good, you might not, we almost might see a regression in some things, in the sense that you might not be able to trust anything online. Like you can't use it for, unless it's like through like really approved sources. However, that can get thorny in itself, because if that source abuses its power, then you might have a messier situation. Like I was, like, I think, I mean, it's, I think like all kinds of like, I have no idea what it is now, but when I was in college, Wikipedia was not considered a valid source, because yeah, it's mostly right, but anybody can write anything up there, put anything up there, and they might get details wrong. And even now, I would say you might want to avoid Wikipedia for something really controversial, because I've seen, I can't tell you how many topics I've seen where there'll be a controversial topic, and then one side will say something that's mostly false, but then they do say something that's true in there. Like there is a kernel of truth. And then the other side will say something fact-checking that says, no, this is all false, and it disregards the kernel of truth in there. Or they're selective in what they're disproving. So it's like you're not getting an accurate picture from either side when you get like really polarized, things like that. And it's like, this is the value of having like kind of calm, sane debate, is like, let's go at these points one by one and try to do our best to try to arrive at the truth. But when you like kind of lock that down, then it can become problematic. It's like you overcorrect. Or sometimes the people might have a bone to pick with the other side or something. So it's, yeah, no, I'm not implying, yeah, somebody's saying calm, haha. Yeah, well, the most popular debates are not calm ones. However, I have seen calm debates before. I forget what the name of the channel was I saw, where, everybody's trying to act like an adult, and, let's go by this point by point, like lay out our case. You're not doing personal insults or shouting or that sort of thing. And if you're trying to get to the truth, that's usually the best way to do it. Like figure out exactly where your points of disagreement lie. But yeah, for AI media, I mean, you could argue, so yeah, it is making, it's possible we could have an emergence of a higher form that's difficult to fake, where I could, as much as AI can make something seem believable, you might have an AI being able to detect if something's been manipulated also, where they're seeing additional patterns that we don't. I don't know, or maybe or maybe there's some encryption that could be kind of built into something. I mean, not for the media itself, but for like verifying like it was recorded at this time or something like that, that you wouldn't have from a copy of it. So if somebody took so say somebody had a cell phone recording and they record it, they record the video. Let's say there's like a police arrest gone wrong and the cop did something corrupt. if we're in an age where that can easily be faked by AI, maybe there could be some timestamp code that is not that has some encryption on that, so you can still distribute the video, no problem. But the original would have some encoding tied to that you could they could like you could send that to a news organization that they could see, yes, this has been authenticated, that this really did happen as it's seen there. I don't know. It would someone else can figure that out. However, something I would want to say, though, how I talk about how AI is accelerating problems that I feel like AI is kind of accelerating like existing problems. There was a court case ruling by the Supreme Court, I think back in August, where they found that like the line that stood out to me was innocence is not enough. Where I could be getting the details wrong on this, so like attorney would be better to analyze this. But the gist of it was, let's say you're accused of a crime, and you get a public defender. They do a crappy job of representing you, and then after the fact, evidence is found that would have been relevant, or I can't remember if it was evidence was found after the fact. I don't think it was that one necessarily, but let's say there was evidence that was existing at the time of your trial and could have been demonstrated by the attorney, but they didn't. So now you cannot, the Supreme Court ruled if you're having a federal appeal of that cannot be considered. You lost your chance. They literally had like language in it saying that the procedure was like more important than whether the person is actually innocent or not. So like, let's say there was like a security cam footage that like, no, it wasn't me that robbed this 7-Eleven at that time. And my attorney could have shown that, but they didn't because they were overworked, or my public defender. They were overworked and that slipped them. And then let's say it was like some sort of federal appeal. The law of the land now. Okay, so do you name the case? Yeah, it was. I'll recognize it when I see it. Shin versus Ramirez. I'm not going to get into the details. It's kind of grisly, actually, but I think it's Shin, 2 N's. Shin versus Ramirez. They're literally saying, even if you have evidence, if your public defender did a crappy job, that's it. You're found. You're receiving the punishment, even if you're innocent. And I was thinking, like, holy crap, when I heard that. Like, I mean, it's mostly gonna be for fringe cases at first, but that's a landmark ruling in my eyes. Like, yeah, I did that little, I've been meaning to do that more. I did that little note in one of the Dead Game News episodes. Ross will remember that. I remember that. Like, because that's like, wow. Yes, in the U.S., is the U.S. Supreme Court. Yeah, well, you have the court case name. Shin versus Ramirez. It could be I'm getting some details wrong, but I remember innocence is not enough was like a direct quote, I think, from like either one of the justices or like one of the prosecutors for like the case it was for, I forget, or the district attorney, I forget who the quote was, but yeah, it's like, so that's like, yikes. So if that's how the justice system is functioning, the AI is just, I mean, the AI isn't the main problem here, you know, it's, and that sort of thing. But yeah, there is a you know, I actually had this thought before that, like, I've seen people like get details of what I've said wrong before, like frequently, or I realized if there was something that people maybe thought I said something that was kind of scandalous, I have these video chats. I can always clear it up, you know. I certainly don't have the capability to like fake, or the average person doesn't have a capability to fake one of these video chats or the resource. I'm not saying anything important enough to change that. However, over enough time, yeah, maybe somebody could fake a video like this of me, believably. I mean, if AI gets good enough with generations, so yeah, it could get to a point where you might not be able to trust anything you see on the internet, and you'd really have to have like more reputable sources. But again, with the sources, if they become corrupted also, then like I said, it's almost like a regression where everything's local. Like you can only trust what like people you know said, or you know, that sort of thing. Because well, there's more examples. Some of these examples get more controversial than others, but like the one I like to point to is like the war in Iraq with the New York Times, where they basically fabricated or evidence, or they assisted a fabrication of evidence of weapons of mass destruction. Well, that's an abuse of power, and if you're trusting them as a source to do due diligence, that got us into war. And there were other things kind of like that, but I mean, I don't want to go too deep down that path, but that's an example of like an institution kind of betraying trust. So, and I think there's more of that sort of thing now. It just kind of depends. So it's gradually becoming more chaotic for information, what's valid and everything. So, or I guess maybe libraries will become more relevant, because then you can go to the library of a published source of information that is trustworthy, and that where it's a hard copy and it was printed on this date and that sort of thing, you know. Yeah, interesting times. Yeah, I admit I'm not sure what you do with that, but again, this is something that was already happening without AI. So AI would make it worse. I'm not denying that. But. Okay, and I'll answer another question that was right below it on AI. They're saying, since they saw how well the AI voice cloning works, I realized that robots just destroyed my job. They're saying they're a narrator for audiobooks, and hundreds of hours of my voice are online. Anyone can now clone my voice and have it read in any text. The laws on this subject are non-existent in my country, Austria, and even if I had the right to my voice, how am I supposed to search the whole internet to see if someone is using my voice? Do you have any thoughts on this? Yeah, okay, well, let me, hold on, I want to see what the, okay, that wasn't helpful. I was trying to search for, okay, well, I'll answer something else related to AI in this in a minute. Okay, so for your specific situation in particular, I think you're kind of, unfortunately, I think you're right, because I feel like AI voice cloning isn't going to do everything as well yet, or it won't, or it might be more work than getting an actor for some things, especially for like really expressive things. But for books on tape, you generally want a more neutral presentation, and the AI voice there, it's not perfect, but it's getting good enough. And you said for your voice, well, unless you're a real well-known personality, the publishing house might decide, well, okay, it doesn't have to be you. It can just be, we have a list of voices from AI that we do have. So it can just, it's like, even if nobody is copying what you do, the company that publishes it just decides, well, AI is way more economical for us, so we're just going to move to that from now on. And then some voice actors will be fine with having their voice used for AI, so this will all be above board, and you're just out of a job anyway. And the people who are all right with giving their voice, they realize it's like a one-time gig. So it's, you know, it basically eliminates the royalties or higher pay for the voice acting. So, yeah, I mean, okay, now I'll get to, so for your situation, I think you're entirely right. And even if the law was there for it, it still wouldn't protect you. So as for what I think, here are my opinions on this topic. I'm probably gonna I'm probably gonna upset people, but I figure I'm just gonna lay out exactly what I think should happen because I think this is the only answer that makes sense to me. I mean, maybe there's something else I haven't thought of. I'll preface this. This is the short version, and I'll explain it. The short version is I think we should absolutely open the floodgates on AI and find a way to guarantee basic needs: food, shelter, water, that sort of thing. I think that's the only answer that makes sense to me, because everything else I see as kind of a non-solution. Because let's take, because I know some people are really adamant about this, like how it's like with digital art now, or again with voice actors. But let's take digital art for example, because I feel like that one's a little more muddier to sort out. AI is displacing some types of digital art jobs. It's not all of them. Like if people prefer your style, but it's gonna make things more competitive. And for like simpler work where an artist could have gotten jobs before, well, if an AI can do it, people aren't going to. We're saying, Ross, you're insane. These are gonna kill us. What? Kill us all. Well, there's only one scenario I see where the AI kills us all, and that's if we give AI missile launch authorization. Missile guidance is all right, but missile launch authorization, no way. Okay, so I lost my train of thought. For AI artists, AI is already encroaching on like their ability to like earn a living or earn money doing that. Now, there is the argument that the AIs are illicit because they're using existing copyrighted stuff. I think that depends on the AI, because for some of the AIs, it's actually going to be working. The counter argument I've heard to that is, yes, it is sampling all of this art across the internet, but if it's not replicating it exactly, then it's kind of similar to, especially if it gets a better understanding as to what constitutes a copyright infringement or not, it's a similar process to you looking at artists you like and then making your own style kind of derived from that. Now, some of them are flat out just kind of copying and they're not going to that level of complexity. Other AIs, we're not even sure what the hell they're doing. And you might even be able to make the case that, no, this is not going to infringe upon that. Or it's like, it's kind of complicated because I guess it would, or they do a better job at like locking down the copyright stuff. Because if you do let's say Sonic the Hedgehog, if you do fan art of Sonic the Hedgehog, are you committing a copyright violation? I mean, I think, I'm not even sure now. I think you're not if it's like a derivative work. So if the AI gets to a point where it can distinguish between that, then it can show a version of Sonic the Hedgehog that's, it's kind of sampling from all this art that you've seen before, and then it's putting its own sort of version on that, some AIs. So that may, however, I could easily see a court swinging either way on that argument. So that, let's say that doesn't hold up, and they're thinking, no, the AI sampled these images, it's copyright infringement, we need to shut it down. Okay, I think if you look at it either way, it's still a no-win scenario. Because let's say let's say we get like rigid laws passed on this, saying like, we have to lock down AI. There's two levels of that. One is that, let's say if we just can clamp it all down, at least in the United States, not every country is going to do that. So you'll have other countries that say, wow, this is a great tool. Let's run with it. And they'll just pull ahead on that. And then the whole industry will shift towards what the the path of least resistance with like getting production done. So yeah, the United States might get blocked from that, but then you'll have maybe you have companies outsourcing work to another company which has more of a don't ask, don't tell policy to it, so they can kind of work around that. And the other thing is, I think any legislation passed on this is going to be anything ranging from a misunderstanding that doesn't do the job to something that appears to be helping but doesn't, and it's really just kind of a loopholes are written for big companies, but then smaller companies don't have that. So from what I've seen, large companies or big money interests get what they want with legislation. Like, I'm struggling to think. Now, sometimes you have large industries competing with each other, and then only one wealthy interest gets what they want, or they only get some of it. And some people misinterpret that for saying, oh, look, see, they don't always get what they want. But if the industry is more or less, the industry probably sees a lot of money in AI, and there's a lot more that see money to be made than ones that have something to lose from it. So I think that means any legislation that gets passed on this, they're going to have the equivalent of saying that, like, yeah, the average YouTuber or artist can't use this AI. However, if it's done under done under some huge publisher or huge media company, well, then it's above board because they pay a license for this and yada yada. So it's like you're just shutting out smaller people, but you're having the exact same level of encroachment that you're worried about. But let's say so I think it happens either way. Either it happens like through the law and it doesn't protect you, or else it happens in other countries, or just through fan usage and it happens that way and you're still not protected. But then let's swing the other direction. Just say, okay, let's not have any limitations on AI for what people can do. Well, you're still losing jobs and people are still losing money. And the thing is, that's kind of the point I was making in the robot jobs video that I made, is that it's getting more attention now, but I mean, why should an artist have more right to make a living than like somebody who worked at a factory job or in fast food or retail or something? Because the AI is just an extension of automation where, you know, it takes less people to do the same amount of work for or sometimes no work, and that the AI or automation is replacing. And you could say, well, people have adapted to that, but I think we're seeing like the standard of living go down slowly. So yeah, people are adapting by finding gig jobs or stuff like that has less securities, doesn't pay as well. So we're seeing an erosion of just everything. So I figure, well, why do people need to be doing these jobs that in some cases are obsolete? It's like we're trying to protect jobs or add protections of jobs that are obsolete and in some ways stop progress. Because I think there's enormous potential behind AI. However, I don't think the new jobs that might come from that outweigh the number that were being lost. So it's still kind of race to the bottom. So the reason we want to well, it's like the classic Luddite thing with the traditional definition of Luddite, not someone who's just against technology. The traditional Luddites were people who were like craftsmen that were getting their jobs they couldn't compete against machinery and like mass production during the Industrial Revolution. So they they smashed the machines and tried to destroy them. And so on one hand, that is kind of fighting progress, but on the other hand, they need to put food on the table. So to ignore either side just seems insane to me. And unfortunately, a lot of arguments on this stuff seem to go either way. Either we're ignoring progress or we're just making things more destitute for the average person. And it's like when you see arguments, they're always framed as to like not even consider the other side of that. So what I think and like trying to weave it in between, just I don't think that works. I think that's a joke for it. So there was so it seems to the reason they need those protect obsolete jobs or jobs that are just can't compete is because they need them to survive. So to me, the only sane solution, which I'm pretty sure won't happen, at least not without really bad things happening first, would be to just go at the source. Okay, well, let's focus on the surviving part and guarantee that part. Then the chaos can kind of work itself out if you don't if we have that taken care of. So, like, you're guaranteed a home of sorts. You know, you're guaranteed food. You know, it's not like this qualification process. I mean, you might have to qualify for a better one, and you could still have a market on things. Like, if there's food you prefer and there's a good chef or something or a good restaurant, you might want to go there to eat if you can afford it. But if you can't, you still have food. So that sort of mentality. So you could still have markets in that, but or you want to live in a nicer home than what you're guaranteed. You know, I mean, and that could be done. Like, organizationally, if a government wants to do something, it can. I mean, put it like this: everybody who has an address gets mail. That's pretty much guaranteed. You know, if like there was a big government effort long ways back to electrify the United States. You know, to basically bring power lines to almost everywhere in the region. So if like everybody's on Social Security in the United States, or I mean, like you get issued a Social Security card. So I mean, if the government wants to, it can cover just about everyone. So if you made it a program like that, you could. However, I've said before, my politics are fantasy, and I know it, and I can tell that that's not the direction we're heading at all. But in the meantime, you're gonna have powerful interests that can't accept there's not a solution to this other than like directly addressing people's need for survival. So we're gonna come out with this kind of insane debates and arguments, I think, in the meantime about what is copyright? Like, what does copyright mean to a machine? Can a machine have copyright? And it's like we're just kind of drifting into weird territory where this stuff isn't really going to work, I don't think, in the long term. So, yeah, see, somebody's saying you have mass riots. Well, we can be effective at quelling riots also. I mean, you could just see like just a massive underclass emerge if like the riots are effective at getting broken up enough. So yeah, I mean, because yeah, but it's lost my train of thought again. The reason we don't do that, I mean, so this is something we could do, but the reason we don't is basically because powerful interests don't want that, and powerful people tend to be good at retaining power, especially like powerful classes. So, because yeah, I mean, you might come back with like the argument that like, oh well, we're not going to get because of like screw ups, we're not going to get 100%. Yeah, that's true, but we could get a lot closer. Because I was checking before this, like food insecurity and like just in the United States, and it was about like 34 million or something. So that's 10% of the population. So if the current system accepts 10% of the population doesn't have enough to eat reliably, well then for stuff like AI, the jobs that's taking, we're really just arguing about margins. So, okay, well, maybe we're looking at 12% instead of 10%. Well, it's like, well, why not try to aim for 100 and do the best we can? That's what I say. My view is utilitarian. Just focus on basic needs. I feel like that's, and then a lot of other stuff. My opinions on things start becoming much less pronounced the farther away you get from basic needs. It's like, well, we can do it this way, we can do it this way. But it's like, if it's for, I feel like the sane approach is to have the largest number of people being able to survive without lots of stress. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. I think that was the USDA that was saying people are in food insecure environments. Okay, well that's 10% of people who just flat out aren't getting enough to eat on average. But what about everybody else who's like right at the border? So it's like, yeah, okay, they're getting enough to eat, but they're like the stress that they might lose their job or they're not getting enough hours. How many people is that? That's gotta be a lot. That's gotta be a lot higher, I would think. So yeah, so I think this all boils down to like, I have similar feelings on copyright. I have similar feelings on minimum wage. It's like, fine, minimum wage is kind of I think it's kind of a stopgap. I mean, it is a real thing, but well, minimum wage only helps you if you have a job. If you're having trouble getting a job or have some dysfunction or disabled or something, well, then that doesn't help you. So whereas, if you can have guaranteed food and shelter, well, that does help you. So and I mentioned with copyright, earlier, the big argument against copyright is people can lose their livelihoods. So to me, it's the same answer for like automation, copyright, trying to like these stopgap maneuvers to try to like address the problem, but doesn't get to the core. I mean, I don't know. So that's the only thing that makes sense to me. And with AI, I don't know. I really see both sides. I want more AI so badly. Like I'm just seeing all these possibilities. And I'm just like, I don't want to slow down any of it. Just about, missile launches, let's not have we still need human people. If people will absolutely die if the AI makes a mistake, or worse, the AI blindly follows orders, just with no question. If people can die if those are bad orders, then yeah, don't put AI for that. But like for multimedia, my God, like there's so many options. Like, oh yeah, and just as I'm gonna mention this again, because I checked and it still doesn't seem to be out there, but I think it's a matter of time before it happens. Another AI thing my number one thing I want from AI is what I mentioned in the Dream Software video, to be able to recreate maps and try to imitate the game or the game world, that sort of thing. But one that's probably in my top 5 would be the ability to remove laugh tracks from sitcoms. I'm sure we have the capacity right now. It's just that no one's bothered to make it. And if it removes normal laughter, that's fine. That's fine. Because I can think of a few sitcoms I want to watch and just have the laughter removed. So, yeah, I think it's a matter of time before that happens eventually. It's just sort of like a dumb side project somebody does, but there are definitely series I want to watch. Well, Seinfeld. I like Seinfeld, great, but laugh tracks always bug me. And yeah, I like Hogan's Heroes. Let's see, what are some... There's other good sitcoms, but like the laugh tracks turn me off. Well, it was a blot. But and it would make it more surreal, but again, I like surreal comedy, so it's win-win for me. So, yeah, sitcoms are eerie without the laughter. Yeah, they are, but it would work for me. It would work for me. So, yeah, so barring that solution, that we are not going to try to end homelessness or end hunger, at least within a country. I don't know what the hell you do to really rein AI in a way that's like helpful for the average person. I mean, it could be just something I haven't thought of, but like to me, it's kind of like all roads lead to people need a basic way to. That's something I've been saying for years. It's like, what's the answer for when you have more people who need to support themselves than there are jobs to support them? I mean, there might be enough jobs for everyone, but that might not be enough to pay rent or buy groceries, So, and to me, it's just like all signs seem to be just drifting that direction. So, I don't know. Interesting times ahead. But yeah, those are my full thoughts on like AI and like people's rights and this stuff. Because I figure, yeah, there can still be issues. Like, okay, if I had guaranteed food and shelter, like, or just maybe some other needs like, healthcare if you're sick or injured, or like, let's say electricity, water, something that's kind of considered the bare minimum in modern society. If I have that, I wouldn't care that much if like my stuff got ripped off. I mean, yeah, people will care at like an emotional level, but it's like there's a world. There is like a miles apart between getting offended or feeling wrong that somebody ripped you off on something versus what you can't eat now. Or you're gonna be evicted because this happened. Like that's just like completely separate realities for me. It's like the other ones. It's like that's a good problem to have. That everything's so secure, you only have to worry about like your intellectual property and how to juggle that. So he's saying, be careful. The bare minimum is the beginning of slavery. Well, I mean, if there's no, I don't think it works like that, because what happens is when people have more security, then I think they've shown that people tend to be more engaged in like citizenship. I think if you actually do have people who have something to lose can, no, I mean, you can afford to be more of a citizen where you do want to like get corrupt people out of office or have more of a say in your community, or if you don't have to work that second shift in order to pay for rent. I mean, I'm curious about like what's the logical connection you're making with that. Let's see, it's OBS Dark TV. Let's see. Okay, they're saying the summary I gave of Shin versus Ramirez is wrong. A specific type of federal court hearing that's intended to override the state conviction, you're not allowed to order a review of the evidence based on your lawyer screwing up. But you could do that on a state. Well, isn't that what I said about? I didn't say the state level, but I said federal. Okay, it depends on how. They're not allowed to order a review of the evidence based on your new evidence. Basically, can't enter the picture at that level, I think. So, well, we should definitely, okay. Okay, so somebody's saying, so what if people become lazy? People are already lazy, but now their laziness results in incompetence and causes problems. Okay, well, my response to that is not everyone will become lazy. And the part of the problem is that if there's not enough jobs, it's the core problem of automation is it takes less and less people to get the essential work done. So that means you can have more and more lazy people. And so they're thinking like, well, what if people become lazy? There are ways, new culturally and societally, new things can emerge. We're like, maybe we do have more extended school or clubs or other occupations to try to, kind of kick people in the gear. But if not, like, that's a much better problem than going hungry or going homeless. It's like we got to compare the comparative. Now, you can say that, okay, there'll be so many lazy people that there won't be enough to get the work done. I guess I'm kind of skeptical of that. I mean, some people are just kind of driven to do things, but plus you can kind of raise the value of certain occupations then. So I think I mentioned before, like, let's say nobody wants to be a garbage man because, it's not a fun job. Okay, well, now garbage men pay just we realize some jobs become less important, but garbage men, or what, trash collector, whatever the correct term is, trash collector, the need for that doesn't go away. So the city or even a private company starts offering to pay higher and higher wages for that until people still don't want to do it, but then the pay gets to be so good, they're going to go do it. Or enough people are going to go do it. So yeah, you got to, whenever you look at problems, you got to compare like what the problems are to the alternative, I think. So it's saying, but the status quo will become lazy. Well, we don't know. I mean, it could be the lazy people decide after a while they don't, for certain, you probably would see an increase in percentage-wise in lazy people, but then other people might want to do other projects, or like they want to write a book or paint more, or just do outdoors activities or stuff like that. That may happen, that may not. I mean, but to me, that's a much better problem to have than mass hunger, mass homelessness. So, I think the burden on proof, the burden of proof is like what's the proof it would become so high that like civilization collapses, I guess. That's a great quote. In the land of filth, garbage men are king. Yeah, I sort of wanted to get back to yeah, see, somebody's having a good quote here. They're saying they're disabled. They volunteered a ton during the early pandemic, but they didn't do 40 hours a week and they could cancel. Yeah. Oh man, so many jobs are much more tolerable than, oh yeah, if you only have to work part-time. So, yeah, I mean, I can accept that. I can believe that you would have a higher degree of like lazier people, like a higher percentage. It's just that I think you would have forces that would correct if the percentage got so high, it was a serious problem. And again, always keep comparing that to, well, okay, was it better to have the lower percentage of lazy people than the 10% people going hungry, or whatever the homeless ratio is, which includes children, by the way, in that hunger statistic. So it's like, let's see. Are they going to give you all that free without sacrifice? Really, not a single looking for a job for you? That thing has already been done in the world for. Okay, I'm getting mixed up on what the reference is. Well, you say, are they going to give you that? That comes out of taxes, is what that would have, is the way that would do it. Like I said, the postal service. Or you really think people are going to give you your mail? It's like, well, yeah, they do, actually. I mean, like, I may be misunderstanding what people are saying here. But no, okay, but let's entertain the scenario that laziness has become an epidemic, right? Everybody's getting fed. Everybody has a roof over their heads. They're kind of getting basic needs met. But the lazy people it's ridiculous. It's like 10% who are driven are doing all the work, and and robots and AI. Everybody else is just sitting at home watching TV or something like that. Okay, I think that's a problem where where some of the people who are the go-getters might be able to come up with solutions. Like take your like stereotypical drill sergeant types. maybe you're gonna have this guy form like a park restoration project or something like that. And he's not gonna be satisfied with just having volunteers. He's gonna start going door to door and maybe like harassing you about that. Or maybe this organization gets together and you maybe influence like media and start putting a stigma on staying home more. So that you're getting peer pressure or social pressure for just like sitting around doing nothing. And it's kind of considered like a social faux pas to not be doing something with your life. And again, it could be something that we would consider leisure now, like rock climbing or something, but you're doing something as opposed to just something that's more docile. I mean, I see that as something, that's a problem I think we could figure out, So, I mean, I don't know. It's my mentality on this stuff is I can see all kinds of ways that there are all kinds of solutions to problems, but there needs to be an actual will to solve the problem. If there's not, then you'll never solve it. And I figure if the goal isn't end homelessness, end hunger, and like suffering, well, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like basic needs to survive and like security, I think. But everything past that's kind of extra. If that's not the goal, then you're never going to achieve that, I don't think. Whereas if that is the goal, then there might be hundreds of ways to get there. So that's why I'm kind of different. I'm hesitant to say like an ideology because it's like, well, you could have a king decree this, or you could have a democracy do it, or you could have it can vary, there's something in between. But if that's the goal, then it can happen. Whereas if your ideology is just about the structure of it, but then the goals aren't necessarily to feed everyone or to like end homelessness, well then it's not going to happen. I mean, it'll just get. Well, I said before, I feel like I don't have the answers because I from what I see, basically every system gets corrupted that I've noticed. So I mean, just any organization over time that gets large enough because people who want power tend to want power. So. Yeah, well, somebody else is mentioning in the chat. Pressure can come from places besides the threat of starving. Yeah, that would be a more enlightened society. But yeah, and again, I realize this is mostly fantasy talk here. I've said before, I said in the Robot Jobs video, what I think is the most realistic one is something resembling the society in Soylent Green. I think that's way more realistic for where we're going. So, yeah, not the actual Soylent Green part itself, but everything else in there is what it felt like. So, oh, and hey, I'll give a counter argument. Somebody's saying, why the focus so much on productivity? What happened to just being human beings? I want to get on that because that was sort of a pet peeve of mine. Some productivity is incredibly important. However, it gets lumped in with productivity that's not as important. Like producing food, that is really important. I'd say lots of scientific research, that's really important. Let's say we found out a year from now an asteroid's coming. Well, then that becomes top priority. I mean, an asteroid that would slam into the earth and, be like the dinosaurs. That's incredibly important. What are some other things? I'm trying to think. Energy production. And like I would argue environmental sustainability. Those are all really important. However, let's think of coming out with the next year's cell phone, or better yet, an advertising for next year's cell phone. That's not that important in like a society running thing. However, that's all lumped in as productivity. So it's like, well, no, some productivity is incredibly important and can even take priority over quality of life if there's like a real crisis. Other productivity, it's just like you're working really hard to make some company more money that's not really helping things necessarily, or at least not at the scale that warrants that level of work. So yeah, I almost never see that distinction, you know? Let's see. Yeah, it's just producing. Yeah, somebody's giving examples of the. Okay, well, I should probably move on to more questions, but I knew that one was going to be a long one because that one's, you can't look at that one in a vacuum and get like a good understanding, I think, but of all the dynamics, because then it's just you're only looking at copyright, or you're only looking at that job, but then there's too many other things. But okay, let's see. Yeah. Oh, well, I guess I think a lot of this depends on the individual too. But you probably will have a better quality of life working on something, especially that you give a damn about, like, or that you feel has some importance. But so yeah, I'm not. However, maybe you're someone who's just a wreck, and it's as much as you can do to just get out of bed, and like you need medication to even do that. In which case, yeah, you don't really need additional pressure that you need to be working as hard as you can at a job if society is producing enough resources to kind of take care of it, to collectively handle everyone. So it's kind of a spectrum. But yeah, no, I would say quality of life comes quality of life comes second to survival. And I would say survival, it depends on like, well, what's the context? Is the survival problem of our own creation, or is this, again, like an asteroid is coming, so we need all hands on deck, or there's a famine, or something like that, It just depends on what the situation is, where it's just, I mentioned before National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, where that line I love, where you know he can't get the Christmas lights working, and his wife says, like, he worked really hard on this, Dad. He's like, so do washing machines. It's some work. I don't see work as a virtue in itself. In fact, sometimes it's detrimental. Like if you're working really hard, but then you're dumping toxins into the water as part of your job, or your company is, that's detrimental work. So yeah, I mean, work is a virtue in the sense that it is good to kind of keep yourself productive so that you can accomplish your goals, and it can maybe help with your mental health if it's done right. But just work, period, isn't necessarily a virtue. It's all kind of contextual. Okay, more questions. Let's see. Somebody's saying if nobody would ever slack in history, we would already have flying cars and colonizing other star systems. Not necessarily, or we might be all extinct. I mean, it depends on where. Yeah, we might all be all extinct. It depends where you're aiming that productivity. I mean, that makes all the difference. And plus, that implies that people don't get burned out, and that different people don't have different personalities that can help in different ways. You know, I mean, like I guarantee you, some people, especially in creative stuff, aren't necessarily the most productive. However, like a musician, like let's say, or a writer, I mean, they may not be that productive at all, but then after 3 years, they'll produce something that's like cherished by millions, you know? So it can, you know, however, if they had that constant always work mentality, they might never get to the good stuff because they're too burned out, or that's just not how their brain works as well. So, okay, let me get to more of the, okay, I'll start getting pickier on the questions here because I went on so long in that one. Okay, I'll answer this one quick. Have you ever seen Judge Dredd and its megacities? How likely do you think it is that the first world nations will end up as megacities of their own in the future? I could see possibly Asia maybe doing that, or parts of Asia. Um, in general, I think it would be more, I don't think it'll be like that. I think it'll be more kind of, well, like I said, Soylent Green, where you had massive population, but then you had, I'm not sure we're going to see the kind of, I think we'll have a sort of collapse at the same time we have like continue. Well, one, I think the population will probably level off after a certain point. However, I think that level is still going to be way above what's sustainable. But, and then we'll start having a collapse of sorts. It could be a slow one. It could be more rapid during that time. So I don't think it's going to look like what you have in Judge Dredd, where you just have just mega cities, you know, of just utterly enormous populations. Let's see. Okay, for the people asking questions, ask them again in a few minutes when I take the live one, so I don't have to scroll back up. I'm just going to go with pickier questions here. What do you think of the fad of video game remakes and remasters occurring over the past few years? And they're saying they feels like the video game developers aren't trying that much to make new stories or concepts. I think it's probably more the publishers than the developers. Or at least the people that, not the people making the games themselves, but the people running the companies. That's probably coming out. I'm not as interested in most of those. However, if it's like, if the remake is from a really old game, then I find that interesting. Or if it's one I haven't played before, then that works. Like I think the remake I'm most looking forward to is System Shock, because that checks all boxes for me. Because System Shock 2 is one of my all-time favorite games. System Shock is kind of rough, the original, playing it, like with the controls and everything. So that could use a little bit of a makeover. And I haven't played through the original. So System Shock's the remake I want to see the most. Freeman's Mind is being resumed. Slower pace, but it's happening. Like, I would say tomorrow, but I have to like get my file. I literally have to clear up enough space to make room to get the files back on there. They're on external drives at the moment. So I kind of have to like clear the runway for it. Otherwise I'd start back on it. Well, actually I meant to start on it a few days ago, but then the other stuff ended up taking so long that I didn't get to it yet. But for sure, Freeman's Mind's resuming in the next couple of days. So I can promise that. Let's see. Do you think the live service model is here to stay? I don't know. I'm worried it is. I think we should try to fight it as though it is. Yeah, I think it really is, because it'll just wax them. Because all you have to do is require internet access and keep some parts on the server, and then boom, it's a live service model. I mean, even if it's what would normally be considered a normal standalone single-player game, as long as they're tying anything to that server, it's become a live service game. You're saying even the long-standing success of the model has begun to lose money or under platform such as Apex Legends. Do you think developers will turn away from live service games due to the massive risk? Well, that's just it. It may not be a massive risk, depending on how they do it. Fine, like let's say you release a new single-player game, but it requires you to connect to an online server, and they're only doing that for microtransactions. So it's like, they're not throwing this whole big infrastructure spot. They're just get the microtransactions, and it can't be cracked. Well, if they make a bunch of money from the sales of people playing it in the short term, like on release, then fine, they made their money back. The risk was low or minimal. There was almost no risk than there was for any other game because there are no legal consequences for this. So yeah, no, I'm not optimistic at all about that. However, yeah, I'm still gonna push. I'm pushing as hard. Well, I am working on that now. I'm going to push it as hard as I can in Europe, particularly France, because I think it has the best chance for success. If I fail at all legal avenues, then I think our only hope is AI. It won't preserve the game exactly, but we could get closer and closer. The breakthroughs in AI are tremendous. So, something that looks a hell of a lot like the original game, even though it's different, is still very good in my eyes. So, you seem to enjoy driving games. How do you feel about the current state of them? It seems like all now are either simulation or Need for Speed. Arcade races have all but disappeared. There's some. I mean, I would argue the new Forza Horizon. Well, the Forza Horizon series feels kind of arcadey. That one's sort of in between. Like it's kind of arcadey, kind of sim. I think there's lots of smaller ones, but yeah, we could use more. I care less about how arcadey or simulation is. I'm more about all the environments. Is what so I mean, need for some the new test drive Solar Crown's coming out. That one might be another online only one. So yeah, that. Test Drive and Test Drive Unlimited are single player games. Even though 2 really tries to push you online, you can play it offline. It could be Solar Crown, you can't play it offline, ever. In which case, that's a friggin' nightmare because, those games are great for just driving around and seeing everything, or just going through the races, I feel like I skipped the question earlier, but okay. Oh yeah, you mentioned a few times you believe System Shock to be superior to BioShock in almost every way. If I recall, you also recommend System Shock modded with things. Well, it's not even a mod. It's just you're changing like a couple values in the config file. It's like the bare minimum of a mod, with things that get rid of weapon durability and change spawn rates. I'm curious, is that a fair one-to-one comparison if one needs to be altered to be better? I thought about it, and yeah, it still is, because, okay, I think vanilla System Shock 2 is still better than BioShock. However, it would just be harder. So, whereas I felt like BioShock is a little too easy, so normally, if I have to choose between too hard and too easy, I'll take too easy. But there's other things. Like, I think the music's way better in way better in System Shock 2. Though I will say that BioShock's use of Beyond the Sea, Frank Sinatra, that was very well done. That they nailed that. But this one's subjective, so that this isn't but I think I guess most of this is subjective. I think I like the setting of System Shock 2 a lot better than BioShock. I'm not really into like the retro future stuff. Well, it depends, but I was all aboard System Shock 2. I think System Shock 2 is scarier. I mean, BioShock has like that one jump scare with the doctor or whatever, but overall, System Shock 2 is definitely scarier, I think. I think System Shock 2 is deeper gameplay. It's more of an RPG FPS hybrid, Whereas Bioshock feels kind of dumbed down with that. I mean, the story is almost the same, but I feel like Bioshock kind of explored like the political angle of objectivism more, but System Shock's explanations kind of made more sense to me. Like Bioshock felt more like a set piece, whereas System Shock 2, that's like they were really trying to like sell me on this reality. Like the things made more sense. I like the inventory system with the gameplay and System Shock 2. So yeah. Oh, so somebody's saying, "Whoa, he doesn't like Art Deco." No, I can like it. It's just no, Art Deco can be awesome. It's I don't know, something just didn't quite click with me as much with it. I guess what it is, it's I don't know. I don't know because I like the concept of an underwater city. Yeah, that's great. I don't like as much how I guess I don't like as much how it's set in the '60s because I mean I guess they're going for alternate reality, but it feels like the for something that's focused on technology, it feels like it's more limited. Whereas I feel like I don't know, but I do like steampunk stuff where they go like over the top with it. But I don't know, it just didn't quite click with me as much. But no, because I do like underwater cities. I do like Art Deco. It's just I feel like maybe it's like maybe it's like a pop cultural thing. I'm not as a fan of the '60s as I am like more contemporary or futuristic kind of culture stuff. Okay, more questions. I'll try to rapid fire this. Somebody's asking how the script changed in the writing. It's not very conscious, but I try not to repeat myself too much because that's a bad habit of mine. Okay, the AI question I answered. Are Pop-Tarts ravioli? Not that I know of. That's both sound delicious. They're saying, how is it possible neither I nor Civi nor Mandalore have covered Anachronox yet? Anachronox is a turn-based combat game. Don't expect that to come from me. In fact, that's been on my to watch a playthrough of list for a long time. That's like towards the top. That's like in my top 5. That games I know I'm not going to play, but I want to watch. I want to get the story and the environment. I think Civi only does first-person shooters, so I guess it's out of that roster. It's up to Mandalore. So then there might be others who want to cover it. So yeah, so Civi and I are eliminated just by our tastes. Okay, Test Drive 3. Somebody was making a VR. Or no, I think they're porting it to Unreal. So I was more interested in that than the patch. Asking about that. Okay. Oh yeah, somebody's asking if my hesitancy on Freeman's Mind has been because that might be because I'm maturing more. No, that's not it. It was just it's time and then just drawing blanks. It's time allocation and drawing blanks. So it's I just need to think of the right things to talk about. It's not that like I've outgrown it. I still like Mystery Science Theater 3000. So you know. Would you be willing to provide the scripts for the videos? Well, for Freeman's Mind, it's just a loose collection of notes, and I don't even write down everything. For Game Dungeon, other stuff, sure, although it can vary from what the final thing is. Sometimes I change sentences. Sometimes I cut stuff out. I can maybe put that in the forums in the subtitle section, if just as is, if you guys want it. Yeah, it hadn't occurred to me that would be faster for subtitling. But just, no, it can vary. Like, I'll be saying some words differently or cutting stuff or adding a couple things. I mean, it's going to be like 95% the same, but... okay, this one would need more votes about types of games. This one, I was having a really hard time deciding. I'm still not sure. They're saying, would I rather be blind but have Daredevil levels of hearing, or be deaf but have telescopic X-ray vision? I think I might lean slightly towards Daredevil hearing because you can sort of see, but you're not going to be seeing movies or like games or screens. It would just be like I forget Daredevil's perception level, but you would kind of perceive like physical environments stuff, but not like changing pictures necessarily or the so. Well, they say Daredevil levels of hearing. So Daredevil has other senses too, I think. So they're just talking about the hearing. Okay, skipping some that I've answered. Let's see. Oh yeah, somebody posted a clip that they were using my voice for AI. It didn't fool me, but I could see it fooling in the future. I tell you what, you can use my voice. You can use you can use voice clips. But anything resembling fair use is fine. Though if you're actually putting new words into my mouth, maybe put that in the credits somewhere. You know, that's my prerequisite. Otherwise, it's fine. You know, you don't. Yeah, that's right. I guess people copyright likenesses. I'm not worried about that. Don't. Unless I'm forgetting something really important, like you can. If you're putting words in my mouth, go ahead and say as much somewhere. You know. But other than that, I'm not worried about copyrighting my likeness. And of course, for some reason, the first thought, because of how my brain works, my first thought when saying that was I was remembering David Duchovny as the hand model in Zoolander, because I was thinking, well, I guess if you were a model, well, like copyright your likeness is like a much bigger deal, but my likeness isn't. That's not the valuable part of anything I do, so it's fine, you know. Yeah, and if you get rich off of selling merchandise of me, which I'm not worried about, then give me a cut, huh? Just send me something. So send me a fair cut. I'm not going to come down at you after that, but you know. Okay. More AI stuff. I'm skipping some more. Oh yeah, this was one I wrote down. Okay, I wrote down stuff for this. They're saying they bought Control, and by all rights, it should be the perfect game, but the camera acceleration just bugs them, so that's basically unplayable for them. Do you have any games that that you so badly wanted to love and just annoy you too much? Yeah, definitely. Like I said, pretty much most games that get the love-hate rate. The first that popped into mind was The Crew, because it's like, man, and The Crew too. It solves some things, but like it added this blur to the textures in the background, even if you turn depth of field off, that just kind of bugged me. And of course, I want that to be moddable and like be able to control the time of day and stuff like that. Let's see, The Secret World, and I realized most MMOs I just hate the combat on. That's like the Secret World. I tough through it anyway, just because I liked everything else so much in it. But even then, the combat was a chore. And for my wife, yeah, okay, this is SOS for anyone who wants to help here. She really wants to play Final Fantasy, I think it's 15. That's like the road trip one. But the field of view just throws her off. Like she just can't. So, and last time I checked, which was last year, there's no field of view mod for it. So if somebody wants to mod Final Fantasy 15 to have a field of view, she might really appreciate that. Oh yeah, this one kind of stings. Recently, Lost Ark. Visually, the game looks amazing. I'm not super on board with like what I would call the anime-ish look, but that's okay. I can overlook that. The game's great. It looks like there's a ton of content, but the gameplay with the attacks, there's like cooldowns on everything. And I hate that. Like, I really don't like, I just don't like cooldowns. Like, it's, uh, I really had to like, I want to play this game, but it's like, this is gonna be a chore with these cooldowns because it's basically wanting me to turn it into a rhythm game. It's like, I don't really enjoy that. I, I don't know. I mean, it's not like most action RPGs in that sense, where you're kind of constrained by your mana or something like that. Um, or yeah. So yeah, Lost Ark. I may have to add that one to the list. I may just watch a playthrough of it, and that stings because I can see there's a lot of cool imaginative stuff in there, like, and I'm all about big fantastic environments, and it looks like it's packed with that. So, oh yeah, and I guess the other one is I would say Dark Souls-ish games where I like the atmosphere. The combat can be okay, but it's like, well, I think a lot of them for Dark Souls, I'll have to see about like the Dark Souls inspired ones, but I don't necessarily like the grindiness of some of them. But that could be solved with, yeah, with Dark Souls. All my issues with it could be solved if they did one of two things. Either I can save anywhere, so I can have save states, or I can make it so that the enemies don't respawn at like resting points when I heal up. If I could have either one of those things, I would be fine with Dark Souls type games. But since I don't get that, then no, it's just, I find it a bit frustrating. It's like, it's not as much fun. Oh, a more recent one. I tried, yeah, it was free on Epic. I played some of Death Stranding, and there's a lot I was liking to that. And I was thinking, oh, it's coming up with excuses for me to kind of travel everywhere. Like, okay, cool. I like that concept. But it's like, it went, for my taste, it just leaned too far in like having to keep your balance. Well, and then like having protections against like this damaging rain. So you have to like have extra gear based on like what if the weather might change and you don't know if that's gonna happen. I did not get that far into it. I got into like I just cremated the body in it. And then I was coming back. Oh yeah, and then it looks like there's monsters that maybe it's kind of invisible and they're gonna be like kind of a pain to detect. And it's like, and what I started thinking was, this feels like a job. Like the the like the amount of, because it wasn't like torture, but it's like it's like kind of tedious, and it's like if I'm doing this, like I'd rather just do something productive if I'm gonna be having this kind of feeling from it. So, but if I figured if I could have like 2 or 3 mods for it, I think I would want to play it. But I've just been going and watching a playthrough instead. I haven't quite finished it. I've seen enough to know that I made the right choice watching a playthrough because it would just been too tedious. But if I could have had like, oh, that's the other thing is I go out all the time for exercise and I'll go into the forest and I'm thinking like I could do the, except for the invisible monsters and the time accelerating rain, I could do his job. Like I could do this. It's like, so just navigating terrain and like while carrying a heavy load, it's like, this is too much like a job. So yeah, I said earlier, I'm not really into job sims. Like some jobs have a cool aspect to them where if I can kind of make it a more casual experience, then it can be fun. Like if it was just delivering supplies and like building walkways and maybe finding some resources, I think and I have all that as part of a big long plot, I think I would like Death Stranding a lot. But it's like they kind of go for that extra tedium in there that just like it's not quite it's a bridge too far for me. So uh it just didn't almost like if I had a few, if you could mod that game like you can mod Skyrim, I would have just modded it and played through it all the way, I think. So and to answer the chat question quick, yes, I've played some of Arx Fatalis. I need to finish it. I didn't get super far into it. Okay, so more questions quick. I'm just skipping more because I know I've been going on a while. Let's see. Some of these are just gonna have to get more votes next time. Sorry. This. Okay, well, I'll mention real quick. I'm still toying with the idea of Machinima, but Postal 1. Well, not strictly speaking. If I was gonna make a Machinima, I would want to. It'd be sort of in between Postal 1 and 2, like not as zany as 2, but more comic than 1 is what I would aim for. And I don't want to give away all my ideas on that because maybe I do make it sometime. Hey, maybe in the future with AI, I have all these models laid out and I'm just explaining instructions to the machine all day, and then at the end of the day I have a scene. You know what a boon that would be to me? I could like 10, 20 times my videos then. Yeah, like Scotty in Star Trek 4, hello computer, kind of like that. So I was asking, I think modern AAA games are getting too bloated nowadays. I think it's all about quality. Like if you really enjoy the gameplay or the content is just bursting and you're liking it, then they can be as long as they need to be. But if they're just kind of padding it out and just being big for its own sake, then yeah, it's just, I'd rather have a tighter game. But yeah, if I like the game, just keep going. I mean, I think Lost Ark was going to be one of those if I had liked the main gameplay. It sounds like it's huge. Okay, they're asking if I think there should be restrictions on how much AI can be in video game production. No, I don't. I think we can. I think there's the potential to make today's games look kind of primitive in gameplay design compared to what we might be able to do with AI, or maybe scope, but maybe gameplay design or scope. Yeah, I think that potential is there. Sorry, skipping more questions. Okay, geez, this is coming. They're saying I'm the reason they became a security guard. I hope not. I mean, I hope I tried to dissuade you from it, but they're saying they've been looking to get posts that only require my presence and very little social interaction. Well, if it was a lot of social interaction, that might be all right if I could talk to people. But and they're currently in a post so they can sit and watch or play video games in a guard shack. That's not bad. That's not bad. Now I'm a bit more financially stable and have a question. How do I get over my self-hate and low self-esteem? They've been struggling with thoughts of success because all I can ever focus on is eventual failure. They have low self-confidence. Yeah, this is why I want to answer that one because I feel like this person needs an answer more than the average person. Well, one, I mean, first, recognize what you have. You're sitting in a shack getting paid to play video games maybe, 80%, 90% of the time? You're living some people's dream right now, and you have financial stability. So don't write off your success level. I mean, there was I think I mentioned before in The Sims, like I think there was an expansion for the original. There was a slacker career path, and like you could level up in that. It sounds like you've gotten some levels up in that. So yeah, first off, don't write off what you have there. I mean, when I was doing security guard work, when I could, I would sometimes like think up like script ideas for civil protection. That's why I have like way more than what I've done so far, which is like I'm always behind on something. But self-hate, I don't. I don't know. I mean, that's not something I I mean, maybe as a kid, I might have had some of that where, you're told what to do and these are the rules and you're bad for not doing it. But, once I became an adult, you realize, like, so many people don't know what they're talking about, or this is just to, or this is like a sledgehammer to kill a fly. What they're doing, it's like, okay, they're trying to get this purpose, but they're going way overboard or way overkill, or they have confused values on like what's important or something. So don't assume other people know what they're talking about. I guess if you're comparing yourself to other things. Um, what the yeah, I'll say also, I want to go back. If I had if I could been in a guard shack all day and have like a Game Boy or something, like I might not have quit security work. So I would have probably just done that by day and then just kept doing videos on my off time. I mean, so yeah, so I wouldn't knock that at all. But I mean, yeah, low self-confidence. I mean, I don't know. It's like that might be a personality thing, or like just messages you've been told that are kind of deep in your head that may not be that helpful. I mean, for me, I know what I like and things I sort of aspire to or like want to do with my life. So I try my best to kind of pursue that and balance that with like real world demands. So, and what other people think about like what I should be doing, that doesn't really factor in unless it's like, unless it's like a social norm that would cause like real problems if you're not adhering to it. So it's like, oh man, I know I'm going on longer, but I'm thinking more things. There was, okay, it isn't quite like this, but from a Rick and Morty episode I saw, they're having this, because I was thinking Christmas events can be kind of like a chore. It's like, all right, I gotta go here. I mean, unless there's somebody you have to talk to that you get along with. Those family gatherings can be kind of a hassle, but you should probably go along with, that's like an example of something where you should probably conform to that just to have, just to smooth waves over, because you're going to have more problems if you don't go to that, maybe with your family or your relatives, that sort of thing. And I was thinking, Rick and Morty show, there was one episode where they're having a Christmas party and they're telling these lame jokes, and like this is just like, this would just be, mild suffering if you had to go for it. And then you see Rick, for those who haven't seen the show, he's the mad scientist, kind of a more caustic, sleazy Doc Brown from Back to the Future character. He comes in and he just casually laughs right into it, like, ah, ha, 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 ha. And then it's just like, Morty, my boy, can I borrow you a Yeah, it makes introductions. So, you, Jane. So he is just he is just completely smoothly inserting himself into this Christmas party. And you know that he would absolutely despises this, like this sort of thing, like his character. But he's putting on like a complete mask to get to his purpose so he can get Morty for his assistant, which is the kid there. And then like, can I borrow you for a minute? So he's just blending in for those purposes. And then like the next scene, like this homeless guy in the garage, like he wants to shrink him down to like the size of an atom, so to inject him in there. He's screaming, hurry, he's having cardiac arrest. Like, so I was thinking, like, I love that scene because it's like, he wants absolutely nothing to do with this, but he's just completely faking it just to deal with these social interactions. So yeah, don't disregard like everything, all social norms, but you can probably throw out a whole lot of what people are telling you is important and try to decide for yourself like what's important to you, or like what do you value in life, you know, or because sometimes the people like telling you like what's you should consider success or not don't. I mean, there's some metrics, you know, but there's other things that's just like you know, you might be on a yeah. I think I told Magda for like I'm on a different quest line than a lot of these people. Like like I think I mentioned before that like if someone's a billionaire, to me that almost shows like a lack of wisdom because they're not using the resources that they have for something more important. Like it's uh or what matters more to them. It's just like they're kind of on autopilot and like how many billionaires have had divorces or bad relationships or something. So that's another metric of success. Or I mean, it just depends on what you value. So I just wouldn't compare yourself to a lot of uh, uh, what other people say is important because even financially successful people apparently I've heard of someone who's like more recently become more ingrained in sort of like a corporate executive world, like they've entered sort of the bottom rungs of that. That a lot of these people are apparently miserable or have like awful family lives because they're not pleasant people to be around. And if you have the personality traits to really make a career out of getting everyone else to follow you, n- not through your charisma or because they believe in the project or you know just because you have the power and you're waving their livelihood over their heads if they don't fall in line, you might not be a very nice person to be around. So it's like, yeah, they might have a very successful position, but when they go home they might envy your situation even. So you never know. Oh, okay. And okay, I'm not going to recite it here because we're going on long, but look up the poem Richard Cory. That was one of my favorites as a teenager because it makes you, it illustrates that like what you think is successful may not be what you want, you know. So, uh, yeah, yeah. So just figure out what's important to you, and then you know it's not just I guess the other thing is, I don't think I've had as much. I mean, maybe as a kid when you're still kind of forming, figuring out everything, but uh, what the as a kid, yeah, yeah. Ah, jeez, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, I realized to be like there's success and like you know being down on yourself. I think I realized after a certain point that like see some people like try really hard and might aim for perfection, and I realized at some point like if you have a real understanding of what perfection means in a field, I realized I'm nowhere close to that, like in anything. Like so like you have to be like singular of focus almost like to be perfect at something. So once you realize that you're never going to be perfect at anything, well, I guess that maybe that gave me more of like a freedom to just kind of screw around more or just keep attempting things because I know I'm not getting to perfect. So and so I don't have that kind of pressure, internal pressure on me. And there's also no one definition outside of mathematics. There's not a whole lot that you can that actually is perfection, you know, because art you can't necessarily create the perfect art that's subjective or if you're trying to pursue perfection in one area, you by definition can't in another area. Like if you're like, let's say you want to be an Olympic athlete. Well, do you really think you're gonna have time to also be the perfect doctor, or like or the perfect master of literature? Maybe you could work in two, but that would be it. You know, I mean that's why in comic books you have like what Bruce Banner has 7 PhDs or something. That's because it's a comic book. You know? And maybe some people do have 7 PhDs out there, but you can bet they're not off having adventures. They are in the library right now or writing another paper. So, you know, it's perfection comes at a real cost of things too. So, yeah, I mean, if you need more than that, maybe you would find a psychologist helpful, but it's, yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. Just, yeah, you certainly have a job that gives you time to figure out what you want to do. And if you're really not sure, I guess just write down a bunch of ideas and just try one and just keep going with it until you're sick of it. Then that might give you a better idea of something else. So, okay. More questions. Skipping a lot more. I've talked about Serious Sam before, but if people want me to talk about it again, just vote, get more votes next time. Let's see. Okay, well, this is something I've repeated. It's about the live services again. I think there's some confusion. I think there's only so much room for subscription services. And I think the MMOs taught us that, like back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. But if they're not a subscription, I'm not confident we've seen the end of them. Somebody wants to know my opinions on 3 games I haven't played, I'm afraid. Modern Warfare 2, Battlefield 2042, and Halo Infinite. Sorry. I've played, I guess I haven't played any of the Battlefields. Well, actually, I messed around a little bit in like I think I tried to get Battlefield 2142 working, but I don't do as many multiplayer as I used to. It's just like, there's so many really good single player stuff that I just try to gravitate towards that more. Okay. You were talking about live service bubble. You know what? They may say that and people may talk like that's happened and it's popped and it's not as popular anymore. But if the games keep dying, then not the part of it that's popped that I care about, you know. Xenonauts is a game I would be interested in if I just didn't care for turn-based combat. So he's asking about GABA supplements, which is apparently a neurochemical for, they're saying in the brain produces an abundance during childhood, which is why kids are fast learners. We lose more of it as we grow older. Do you think it would benefit you? Yeah, possibly. However, I'm real wary about stuff like that because I never know. My medical knowledge doesn't go much past high school and first aid, but there's always a chance you might develop a resistance to some chemicals so that your body acclimates to that. And then when you stop having it, it's like you're in a worse spot than when before you started. So I'm wary of any substances like that, but I have no idea. I kind of do want something like that for, I mean, in the past I've had major depression when I was younger, but I can still have like mini flashes of it. It's nowhere near the same level. That I'm almost dead certain it's like food related, like what I eat. But the thing is, I haven't figured out like, I kind of wish every day was like, I feel productive and want to work on stuff, or if I feel overworked and I want to just relax and have fun and just have like a deliberateness to it. And then some days it's like, it's a lot more to do that. And I'm wondering if it's like just the right chemical balance, if that's sustainable. So I don't know. So maybe I still could use like a really mild antidepressant, but okay. Okay, I'll answer this one quick. You mentioned Fast and Furious, the last game dungeon movie. talking about the best villain deaths. Have you seen the other ones? Are there any scenes you really liked? I haven't seen them all. I think I got up to, if that one was 5, I maybe got up through 6 or something. I don't know. It's kind of they all kind of blur together for me. I think the big action finales in them tend to be good. And my favorite might be if I had to say, I remember my favorite being maybe either Too Fast, Too Furious or Tokyo Drift. Too Fast, Too Furious, I felt like had just the right amount of stupid in it. Like it was, like I feel like the series isn't as strong when they get more dramatic, and it's better when it's just like, yeah, we got to get away from the FBI, but we're gonna steal this too. It's like, yeah, let's go, vroom, and then just lean in hard to like the showboating with the cars and the stunts and like the swagger of all of it. I remember, I found it kind of hilarious. Like I've forgotten a lot, but I remember grinning like constantly when I watched Too Fast, Too Furious. And Tokyo Drift had a lot of style to it. I like that about it too. And then I'm almost like kind of confused on the storyline because, what was it, they killed one of the main characters in Tokyo Drift. So like everything after that's a prequel or something, even though the characters are getting older because they wanted to bring that character back, or see, somebody's saying the first one was the best. I don't know. I like Tokyo Drift and the second one more than the first one. I guess those don't have Vin Diesel, though. I like Vin Diesel. He wasn't the problem at all. Though I think I'd rather see more Riddick for Vin Diesel. I think Pitch Black might be my favorite movie with him in it. Let's see. Okay, I should speed it up. Skipping more questions. I'm just skipping more, sorry. Just getting to the end of it. So I was asking plans for a zombie, well, no plans for a zombie apocalypse, but I should probably have more plans for other types of apocalypses. Let's see. Oh, there's someone saying the Game Dungeon can be kind of an odyssey with games like Armed and Delirious and Arcade America. Do you know what sparked your interest in this sort of genre? Oh, I don't know, but that's definitely at a core of what I'm about. Like having some big journey where strange things can happen, and it's like an experience. Like to me, that kind of feeling is almost like the absolute top tier of game experiences for me. So, well, when it comes together, it can be kind of rare. So, okay, people can start asking live chat questions. I'll just try to rapid fire as many as I can. Sorry it always ends up going like this. Yeah, do that at Ross Broadcast. Okay, any luck getting the Zach Bellica emails from your old university? No, but I forgot about that. I can try sometime. I think what I have to do is like do a Skype call to USA and I can maybe sort it out. And call the university. Hopefully it hasn't been deleted, but. Have you heard of a game called Cookies Bustle? Yeah, people are emailing me about that potential Game Dungeon episode. Originally abandonware until unrelated development claimed ownership and has since been erasing everything about the game's existence. Yeah, but the fact that went viral, I mean, were people able to, if it was abandonware, you might have a Streisand effect of that. That's where the thing you're trying to suppress blows up in your face instead. So good, you know. Have you heard of or played Burnhouse Lane? I guess not. Psychological horror adventure games set in England, created by a Polish developer who composed the music. It's impressive for the two of them created. Okay, I can look into that. Burnhouse Lane. Looked into the CUDA thing. It looks like it's extremely difficult to make already compiled CUDA programs. Yeah, that's what I thought. The understanding is I thought that if you already had this, if you have the source code in CUDA and like you're the developer, then AMD made it a lot easier to translate that to OpenCL. But if you're like the end user, we need more. Have you ever given a listen to Destiny's Music of the Spheres? I guess not. Maybe we should look into that. Yeah, wasn't one of the Beatles involved in that or something? Or like Paul? They're still kick. Yeah, a few of them are still alive. So sure, why not? I recently said Alan Wake 2 is in a playable state. Did you ever play the first one? If so, what do you think? Mixed feelings on it. That one may or may not get a Game Dungeon, Alan Wake. So I kind of want to hold back all my thoughts on it. But yeah, it got kind of mixed. Stuff I like, and there's stuff that it wasn't quite what I was hoping for. Let's see. If you could change anything about how current and future games are distributed and preserved without preventing them from being profitable, what would you do? It's like just have a mandatory end of life plan. That would not prevent them from being profitable. I mean, if it's from the design phase, you know, it takes as much work as, yeah, in the games as a service thing, some people were trying to be snippy and say like, oh, so it takes as much work as anything else. Like, it's like, yeah, but just having multiplayer takes work. It doesn't take much additional work as to just making the decision to have components of the game. Like the same way taking sound takes work, or making maps takes work. It's like it takes work, but not extraordinary more than just any other aspect of the game. So it wouldn't hurt profitability. Can you elaborate on best Star Trek series episodes? Why Deep Space Nine? Well, I haven't. I'm not sure I want to watch it yet. They don't travel through space, right? Well, that wasn't the problem for me, not that I traveled through space. It's that it felt more soap opera-ish to me rather than anomaly of the week. For best, I'd say best series would be the Next Generation of what I've seen. Like as for best episodes, the early Borg ones are fantastic. Geez, I don't remember the name. I don't remember all the titles of these without, and if I describe them, I would give it away. But just look up like best sci-fi Next Generation episodes. You'll probably overlap a lot of them. You know, when the apocalypse comes around, can we come to join you in the Scott compound? Well, I don't have one, but look, that's not complete parody. Okay, like if I felt like society really was collapsing, I think that would be more stable. I mean, we would need to make sure we would need someone who's really good at planning out logistics, and then probably have to make a lot of food. But that's not a goal of mine. But that's like I'd rather have that than like die in the apocalypse. So yeah, I'd say there's a non-zero chance of that. So. Okay. Do you see yourself using the AI voice client of yourself to delegate work over Freeman's mind? Probably not, because I care more about the quality than the quantity for that. However, I could replace Master Cookie's underpaid job of volume balancing. I would absolutely throw AI at that. So, or maybe I do, or maybe he does it. Maybe he outsources his own job and I don't know about it. So that can work too. To AI. But yeah, like for the movie, I don't intend on using AI for the voice acting because I have enough context. I can get. I think I'll be able to get enough voice actors, and I think the quality will be higher. But this reminds me of something else I was gonna say, but we're going too late, so I'll have to save it for next time. Remind me about voice acting and AI next time. I wanted to say something for next time. If you could think of any business model you wanted as if you were the developer or publisher. Well, okay, if I was if I wanted to balance the profitability with user friendliness or game preservation, I would have DRM for like the first month or something like that. So that everybody who can't wait, they want the game, they're riding the hype train, they want that game right now, boom, you gotta go buy a copy of it. I mean, you could have it server side, and then afterwards, or you could have a few months even, and then afterwards, patch it, now it's DRM free. Okay, you got your bulk of sales, or I'd be flexible on the time span. I think that would be the best of both. I think that would be the compromise between the publisher wanting maximum profitability versus people wanting to have a product. I mean, people wanting to keep the game. So, I mean, and if it's an online only game, then just have a end of life plan built into it. So, because I think because people talk about how piracy doesn't affect stuff that much, I bet piracy has an impact in the first 2 weeks, but it's impossible to measure. So, I have not played Brutal Legend. I'm familiar with it, but I don't know. Maybe I'll get to it eventually. Is the version of Half-Life Universe Civil Protection more normal than the canon Half-Life, or does Mike just act like it is? I feel like there's so much left out in Half-Life that there's a lot of room for interpretation. So I would, and plus you only get the perspective from Freeman. Maybe Half-Life Alyx undermined that, I don't know. But you only get Freeman's perspective is the other thing, you know? And he's hanging out with a bunch of rebels, so maybe it's different, you know? I would have to look at more of it to know for sure. I was sort of making the civil protection officers somewhere in between, somewhere in between Gestapo versus American police. I guess by the book American police, I guess is a better way to put it, because things are shifting. Yeah. Do you think AI is sending us into a pre-electronics age by affecting all internet-connected devices, and DDoSing them forever will be worse than launching all the nukes? Not even close. Not even close. I mean, nukes are the gift that keep on giving. Yeah, radiation is the gift that keeps on giving. You know, you can recover from a collapse, or from a technological collapse. Whereas I forget what the number of nukes needed, like cobalt nukes needed to launch that would basically end all life on Earth. So, bit of a difference there, you know. No, it really just doesn't get any worse for humanity than nukes. That's, I mean, unless it was like an incredibly terrible super virus that just had close to 100% lethality. I mean, that's the only other thing I can think of. Nukes are basically as bad as it gets, because even if you survive, your life, the level, nobody gets away unscathed, you know. Best Muppets character. That's an excellent question. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, I guess now is Swedish Chef for me, but as a kid, I think it was Animal. No, yeah, Animal was my favorite as a kid. So I've sort of, my tastes have refined for it to be Swedish Chef. Just like I think with Looney Tunes, I think when I was real little, my favorites were the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. But as I got older, it became Foghorn Leghorn. So, yeah, that's an example of my taste shifting, my taste maturing there. So, Son, I say now, son, what in the tarnation you think you're doing? I love Foghorn Leghorn. Okay. A lot of questions. Okay, I'm gonna have to end soon. How is it we have AI art and sound, but no household robots for mundane tasks? Well, less variables, I guess. Besides, less variables. There's a whole lot with navigating real life 3-dimensional space. You know, where. Would you be open to studio? Would you want to open up a studio to increase video production, editing, to have a small? Oh, that'd be amazing. Though I probably need I'll probably need a manager to just manage the studio to make sure to handle day-to-day operations and just things like that. But yeah, that'd be fantastic. How important is the movie to you on a scale of negative infinity to positive infinity? Well, I'm confused by the scale. We'll go on. We'll go with under survival. So survival is more important, but yeah, it's about. It's not far below that. So. What would Gordon listen to his lunch break on his Walkman? I don't know. Think about it. Because some aspects of Freeman I know about, some I hadn't really looked into. So. First 3 quarters of Brutal Legend is awesome. Okay, first 3 quarters, great. Because I heard it got worse with like the strategy element or something. Did you watch Threads? Yes, I have seen Threads. And The Day After. Those are, watch those movies. And I feel like that gives you that gives you a crash course in like how bad is a nuclear attack, you know. Like, yeah, that's a good crash. Those movies are good crash courses on that. Yeah, Threads and The Day After. How would Gordon deal with being ignored or interrupted? Depends on his mood. It could range from whatever to like complete indignant, like, you know, or just snap back immediately. Like, depends on mood and context. Gordon can be moody the way I have him. So I have seen Death Note. A friend talked me into watching that one a while back. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, I'll stop on that note. So, okay, so he's talking about the GUI video. They modified the hell out of Windows 10, and it still hesitant to jump into 11, and Linux is too confusing for him. Awesome. Well, feel free to share knowledge. I still need to figure out what my martial arts style is going to be for Strokes Plus, because we got to pave the way ourselves. Okay, I gotta go. Thanks for showing up. Freeman's Mind is resuming next couple days slowly, and the sound effects guy is helping me. He says we will, but he's gonna have to. It's gonna be kind of slow for him too, so there could be some lag time. But it is 100% back on, and it's just that and the other side videos. I'm gonna kind of split up each day. Is my plan. So, all right, I'll see you.